Ready? 1, 2, 3. Welcome to
Muay Thai Bones. You didn't say 3. You totally
I jumped the gun. I jumped the gun.
Threw a curveball.
I won. Okay, so welcome to the Muay Thai Bones podcast. This is Sylvie, 260 fight veteran. Sylvie's like, everyone knows who I am. Some people are just discovering.
If you're listening to Muay Thai Bones, you know who I am.
People just discover us on YouTube. The algorithm is just like, you might like these crazy two people.
You might.
Yeah, Sylvie, 260 fight
Veteran.
Muay Thai female fighter, veteran and journalist, and Kevin, I'm the supportive husband and photographer, right? And if you're new to the podcast, we go deep dive on Muay Thai, Thailand Muay Thai topics.
We are not topical.
What does that mean?
We don't stay on the surface,
On the surface
of anything.
of things, yeah. We go deep in. So if you are bored by the first thing that we're on, or like, whoa, what are they going into? You can jump usually 30 minutes ahead and you'll find another topic.
We just did a Muay Thai Bones that was really epic. Like, we really deep dove into that one. I think we were breaking records of some kind of
Well, we
deep
spent
dive.
like an hour and 50 minutes on women coming to Lumpinee.
And so we're just coming back because there's more to say. We just went so much on that topic, and there are more things, not on that, but more topics to talk about.
Totally,
So.
and we do want to be doing these bones more frequently because our listeners are like, we love the bones, please more and more. And you are a huge podcast addict.
I would
say
it that.
like 5% of the time, you are basically complaining that you don't have a podcast to listen to.
I would
1%.
90% of the time, all the time.
You
all
are
the
just like
time.
waiting
Yeah.
for your favorite podcasts to come out.
Yeah.
What's one that you're listening to now that you're always waiting on?
Maintenance Phase. I wait for all the time.
What's Maintenance Phase?
It's a podcast that's basically about how the health industry fat shames from every single angle, and that a lot of things that we take to be like, everyone knows that the BMI is a standard, actually has no science to it.
Right.
And it's like, wait, I didn't know that was absolute nonsense that literally my 10-year-old could have made
So
up.
it covers those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And you are like, when is the next one coming?
Well, it's because I listen to podcasts when I'm getting a massage or running or doing errands or
going to
something like
sleep
this.
sometimes.
So like
Yeah.
if I don't have it in my ears when I'm trying to do these things, I get irritated.
Yeah. So I imagine that there are some people who are like, there's another Muay Thai Bones.
Yeah, there was a guy on the last one who was like, I don't have time to listen to this before work, but I will be listening to it in my forklift or something he was doing.
That was pretty
That's
cool.
kinda cool.
Okay. All right. So in normal Muay Thai Bones, I always throw this in there. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's free for everyone on YouTube. Our entire Muay Thai Bones. Oh, we have a little bit of rain, baby.
That's okay.
The entire Muay Thai Bones playlist is available for everyone, but if you become a supporter, even a $1 supporter
On Patreon.
on Patreon, you can get the audio subscription to it for however you listen to your podcasts, and you get the reading notes and the timestamps. The reading notes are kind of like deep dive footnotes that we basically. What? Go ahead, baby. You had something there.
What's that movie we watched with your favorite actor that I can't remember the name of ever? The Freedom Riders or
Are
something?
you making fun of me?
No.
Oh. Yeah.
What's it called? Riders
Justice.
of Justice Riders. Something.
Ju-
Riders of Justice?
Riders of Justice. Yeah.
Not important. The name of the movie. But there's a part that I love in this movie where it's kind of like chaos theory about like what causes something, if there are coincidences, things like this. And my favorite part of the movie is looking at this one piece that's on like a post-it note as like, this is something that happened. And he takes it and he's like, this piece has all these other causes that come from this other thing. And then this is caused by all of these things. And so instead of the like Dexter crime scene with the red string going everywhere, we're like this scene from that movie, which is like each thing, each topic, each moment in a topic, each thing that this is important or this is interesting is because of these 12
network
things.
of things.
Yeah.
And so in the reading notes, we try to put in these kind of like
References.
the references that are not necessarily even directly connected, but they're in the web of ideas so that you can take an even deeper dive than the bones if you go to the patron post. Basically, it's filled with rabbit holes. Like everything is a rabbit hole. and they're things that we didn't necessarily even have time to go down that rabbit hole. But also to mention, we also put out a Muay Thai Bones podcast newsletter, which every couple of weeks or 3 weeks is filled with these little articles.
Oh, this one filled up fast this week.
It was the same, it was 2 weeks, but it felt like it filled up very fast.
Yeah.
But it basically is all the little news of Thailand, of videos to watch and techniques and whatever. Every couple of weeks we put this out, and these are things that feed our brain.
Yeah, and we tend to be interested in and focused on things that are shaping Muay Thai rather than like who fought this week or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
like the opposite of what you'd get on Instagram.
Doesn't fit on Instagram.
And Instagram or whatever these Facebook pages are good sources for who fought whom or even announcements and things. But they basically just share each other's material back and forth. So it's a kind of like monocrop of news. We are like the opposite of that. We basically just cover small events that might be missed in Thai news, or just little things like, I think I need to put in there about Mr. Horsepower Knee, that post you put up. Jockey, old Silver Age. Was he Silver Age?
He's 67 years old.
Yeah, and there's just a great picture of him.
He fought like Siri
smiling with his like ox now. Big smile.
He's in Concane.
And he's got his son sash on.
Totally.
We want to go film with him, but we're not sure if we're going to be able to, if he even teaches or would be willing to. But things like that, little keeping up with the legends in the library and stuff. So you can subscribe to that for free either way. We'll put a link into the description as we do. So our first topic is one of the I'll say this, I don't even know what this topic is, because when Sylvie came and said, I have to do this, I want to talk about this thing, and she's like, we could do it on a Muay Thai Bones, or I can just do it as a vlog. But you basically were like, I just got to go off on this thing.
Yeah, and then I should have actually just done it right then. So I'm actually going to need your help, I think, with it now, because I was very inspired at that moment. I had just come out of a session thinking about it, and then it's just kind of...
But it's okay. We go into it now. I'm just saying, I don't even really know what this is fully, just like listeners don't know. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I think one way to introduce it or set it up even is just that I had talked to Kevin about this before, and I actually thought I'd written a blog post about it, and then we went looking for it, and it turns out that I hadn't, which is crazy.
There might be a blog post out there if you are a very close reader of Sylvie over the years. If you know this blog post where we wrote about this, please let us know, because we can put it in the reading notes.
But so basically the shell of it before we dive in is this idea that as a woman in a male space, and even if you have other women at your gym, gyms are male spaces everywhere in the world, almost every kind of gym. I don't know that a LA yoga studio is a male space, but in India, yoga might be like a male space.
Okay, but you're talking, we don't have to blow it out to the whole world. We're talking about your experience in a Thai gym.
Yeah, but I'm broadening it because I'm saying that I think all women experience this.
That could be true.
Which is that in order to operate within that space with as few consequences and interruptions and kind of like jockeying for position or being taken seriously, I have ended up having to completely castrate myself in order to fit in these spaces. And what I mean by that is just completely sever, silence, mute my sexuality, which sounds at first like it's not really a huge deal, but your sexuality is not just sex. Your sexuality is your sense of humor. Your sexuality is your sense of confidence, empowerment. There are huge consequences to castrating yourself. And I think a lot of people with queer identities will understand what that process is in a very strong way, which is that to castrate yourself to fit in a space is really painful. And people outside that experience are like, well, that's just what you do. That's the appropriate thing to do, because they don't suffer that kind of consequence. And I think that even in spaces that are mostly cis, hetero, this kind of thing, where they're like, we are accepting of queer identities, homosexuality, things like this, as long as they castrate their sexuality, then it's like, now it's okay kind of thing. And I think for women in these male spaces, and for me in the gym space, especially in a culture that's not mine, that is more conservative in a lot of ways than the culture I come from, that castration was completely necessary in order to kind of like ride a certain line and function within it. But the personal consequences and the way that it kind of just like has straitjacketed me and had a lot of negative impact on my confidence, the kind of person I am, kind of thing.
Well, maybe talk a little bit about, when you say castrate, we understand the concept, and it's an extreme word, right? It's almost a theoretical word, though. It's powerful and theoretical, but there is something about a Thai gym. We began up at Lana, which, even though it was a Westerner's gym that had a lot of Thai structure, it had a very strong, the north in Chiang Mai is socially much more conservative than the center and the south, or at least the center. What exactly is that context of a gym that you're talking about? Because there's one, you want to be treated like a fighter, right? But then you're also developing relationships with co-fighters.
Yeah.
Often they're Thai boys that are your training partners, and there's this like absolutely nothing can become sexual. Like even 2 steps from sexual.
Yeah, well,
Sexual is too strong of a word even, but it's almost too big, right?
it's very big. And the thing is that like you can kind of keep sexual innuendo, whatever, at a distance. You can never completely get rid of it. You can kind of keep it at a certain distance, but like not being able to clinch with the boys unless the boys are young enough that their sexuality is not really an issue. I'm very lucky in that my body type is one that I can kind of pass more or less as a male body type.
Yeah.
I'm masculine in my muscles. I'm small. I don't have big breasts. I'm not curvy.
Yeah.
Curvy women have a hard time not being sexualized in any culture.
Yeah, even if they put everything blank.
Yeah, so someone exactly like me but with large breasts might not get the clinching that I get just because it creates a like automatic sexualization of the body.
Or they will get clinching
because it's sexual.
but in not a right way.
Yes. It becomes a joke. You become a joke.
That's almost worse if you're very serious.
Yeah.
You actually, I'm remembering this, you did write an article that was really good about
the mitt and the joke.
The mitt and the joke. Mm-hmm. And about whether or not you're in on the joke or are the joke.
Yeah.
So maybe that was where the castration article that you thought you wrote about a little bit.
That's about not slipping into the assumed gender roles, which this is another thing that like, again, sexuality is not just sex, but even your gender has these elements to it. And this has a lot to do with passing, which kind of brings my friend Angie in, who I just saw for the first time in 2 years yesterday. But like, I can kind of pass as a fighter in the gym for stretches, even though I'm not treated the same way as the Thai boys. I can be kind of like, because I work really hard, I outwork the Thai boys. I actually became a little bit of a like, if Sylvie can do it, the boys have to do it kind of thing. That was kind of funny.
But it was almost a joke.
It was, but
because nobody works.
There are elements to my personality that are totally my personality, but they're also gendered. They're like flagged as gendered. So for me, my way of showing care for someone or for showing that I like am invested in something is to take care of things. So helping around the gym, picking things up, cleaning, making sure that someone like their water falls over, I pick it up and fix it. This is a way of me being polite. This is part of my personality of this is how you show that you care for people, but it's gendered as female. So the minute you start acting in a way that's like the female caretaker of the gym, it gets like amplified and you get pushed harder that way, which is why castrating rather than like, I can do a little flirting is no, you can't. Like you cannot, because it just gets amplified. And I said this to you many, many years ago, which is that if you let yourself slip, that's like you're totally like, I'm not flirting, I don't make sexual jokes, whatever. I totally grew up with all boys. I have all brothers, they're friends. I totally made sexual jokes with my brother's friends. Like this is part of how I am.
Well, it's part of your personality.
Right.
You kind of have like a...
But I had a space there that is not me trying to pass in this gym, is that I told Kevin, it's like if your cat walks backwards. It may never walk backwards again, and you may never understand why it did that, but you will keep waiting and watching to see if your cat ever walks backwards again. And that's that one time you make a sexual joke or kind of flirt or like whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
That in your own culture, maybe like among your own friends, whatever, you can kind of like get by with, but you can't.
Well, not even get by. You could be celebrated for it. That's her kind of personality, the outgoing personality.
This is another thing I have to bring up, is that I'm talking about my experience and what I've had to budget in order to like get by in my scenario. There are 100% women who come into gyms and don't cut off their sexuality at all, and they get a certain kind of attention, or they get to, I'm jealous, they get to be who they are in the space, but it's not a long-term plan.
Yeah.
The consequences of that is why I can't. It's not like I can never do that. I can never do that without the consequences being too much for what I'm trying to do.
And being permanent, almost.
They're very permanent.
Because it's like you say, the cat walking backwards.
Yeah.
It never leaves the record that this happened.
And
we're not talking about actual transgressive stuff where you're like hitting on a Thai boy or something.
Flashing people as you walk by, nothing extreme.
We're not talking about stuff that's transgressive. And we do know stories of some Western women that come to Thai gyms and are transgressive because they have a freedom of not being in their own culture, and they can't feel the boundaries of the other culture.
And they feel power within that.
They feel, there is a kind of empowerment sometimes of like having attention suddenly that you might not have in other situations.
Which is real. That's a real thing.
It's a very real thing. And so this is, I hope people are listening to this actually understand, can identify with parts of this, but it's like, the fact of the matter is, in most cultures, the social power that a woman has is often sexuality. Like, that is how it's expressed. If you want to be very broad about it, the men co-opt the money, and then the women become this sexual object
it's like
or power.
Two currencies.
We talk about two economies.
Yeah,
one is an erotic economy, and one is a monetary economy. Women, this is just being very broad. As a woman trying to enter into a Thai gym where you're trying to be taken seriously as a fighter, being trained as a fighter, which is in Thailand, Muay Thai is hypermasculinity. You're being actually conditioned and trained how to be a man in a way. If you're in a real Kai Muay, all the boys who are like 13 to 16 are all being trained how to be men. Like, it's an actual, in the weird way, like how almost like a soldier in the military is being taught how to be a kind of man.
Yeah.
So when you enter that space, all the stuff about a woman having power in a social space, which is linked to sexuality, has to be fucking gone.
Yes.
Like, completely gone.
Yes. And it's like I said before, it's not only the sexuality, because women also have this gendered element, which is, the gym owner's wife cleaning the gym or whatever.
Yeah, the maternal
and you
element.
don't want to be put into the maternal role either, which happens to a lot of Western women who maybe are in relationships with Thai trainers or whatever at the gym. They totally get pushed into this kind of like maternal role. And it's the same thing where, like, once you do the thing, like once you become helpful in this way, which is not bad in any way, but it gets pushed and amplified that way. And it's like falling out of passing in a certain way, which is, I think of Angie, my friend Angie. She was the first trans fighter to present as trans while fighting at Lumpinee Stadium. She's incredible. Angie, we trained alongside each other. Like, we were contemporary in the gym. I actually was at her first fight at Lumpinee. Just totally, we are sisters in this Muay Thai experience. And because Angie is trans and I'm cis, we totally had this weird crossover in how we were trying to pass. Like, Angie was always trying to pass as a woman, and I was always trying to like cover being a woman.
Pass as a man in a real way.
Yeah,
like
but the thing is, if I do something that's masculine, it doesn't call into question that I'm a woman.
Right.
Because Angie's trans, if she does something that's masculine, they're kind of like, well, why is she trans if she's doing this masculine thing? She has like a huge motorbike, like a big motorcycle, which is a man thing. And so they're like, if she drives a motorcycle like that, why doesn't she just stay a man? Which is so stupid. But it's the same thing of like, if I do something that's coded as female, like helping clean something or, you know, going and getting ice for someone who just smashed their knee, like being helpful.
Totally.
If I were a boy, that's a young, low rung on the ladder move.
It's you like acting like a 12-year-old kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever. As a woman, it's like, oh, great. Now you're doing the woman things. Go do more woman things. So the ways in which Angie and I were trying to pass in opposite directions was really interesting. And it demonstrated itself in such a strong way when she finally went and was fighting at Lumpinee, which is that she was actually allowed to fight at Lumpinee at that time. Women were not allowed to fight there because Thailand still sees her as truly a man.
Right.
And so she was going through this experience that was actually really difficult for her because they were very wrong with her in many ways. And she was saying backstage they were harassing her and touching her and sexualizing her because women are sexual kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's like, she said to me privately, she said, they should be treating me like a woman. And I said, if they were treating you like a woman, you wouldn't be fighting here.
Yeah. That was a crazy moment for both of you.
Yes.
Although she probably didn't completely understand that.
Yeah.
Also, you often brush over this, but Angie began her entire path towards Muay Thai. What was she, 30, 28 or something?
32 maybe? I don't know.
When she started.
Yeah.
But she started in part because of seeing Sylvie in the gym and seeing what Sylvie was doing, which is a kind of trans project. I write about this actually. You basically are a woman raised in your culture as a woman, and then you go to another culture and you take on a project of hypermasculinity.
Right, which me doing Muay Thai, I'm like, Thai male masculinity. Like, this is my fucking jam. Like, that's, I love it. That's what I'm trying to do.
Totally. And so she saw that, and she saw the possibility for herself. I still don't even completely understand this, how it makes sense to herself. She sees a Western woman, older Western woman, like in general, I don't know which, is that someone else? That's somewhere else.
I don't know.
Yeah. She sees an older Western woman passing as hyper Thai masculinity in the gym, and she's inspired, who is born gendered male by the culture, heading on this project towards trans female, and she's like, I want to take on the project of hypermasculinity because look what she's done.
But this is the insane thing that like gender has to be this or that, and it's like so divided that like me as a cis woman, I can look at Linda Hamilton in T2 and be like, fucking Sarah Connor, like I've never seen a woman look like that, and I love her.
Yeah.
And that's okay because it's like kind of not, it's not gonna make my facade fall. But Angie coming to femininity and not doing the hyper feminine thing, but being like, yeah, I also love Sarah Connor's femininity, is like, oh no, that's too masculine. Like now you're falling out of the like performance kind of thing, which is annoying. And Angie was also very castrated by the gym.
Right.
Although they would very teasingly sexualize and like flirt with her, and she would don this like flirting back thing that didn't feel super happy or authentic. It was like she was playing the role that Katoi are supposed to play.
Katoi
They're
in
so
Thailand,
sexualized.
a lot of them are sex workers in Thailand. So it's almost like a hyper-sexualized version of how women are treated.
Yeah.
They're like, they're there for ogling and flirting and whatever.
Yeah.
And so
it's almost like she couldn't castrate herself the way that she needed to.
She almost couldn't because of the role she has in her own culture.
Yeah.
Now, but I want to make super clear, this is not about you complaining that these cuttings off of yourself happened, or I really wish I could flirt and joke because it's unfair.
Oh, I chose it. This is about, because of the consequences.
This is about the consequences of what you had to do in order to have opportunity.
Yeah.
And the awareness that these consequences are still playing out.
Yeah.
It's not something you did 5 years ago. It's something you still do every single day at the gym. And
this is another element of it that's so infuriating and frustrating and difficult to navigate, is that for the most of the time, I am the only woman at the gym.
Right.
Most of the time. Like, there have been times when other women come, but in Chiang Mai and in Pattaya, most of the time I'm the only female training at the gym. So I have this like, yeah, you're kind of part of the group, but actually not. Like, you still kind of are just outside of it. I'm excluded from certain things. I'm kind of handled slightly different ways, in a way that I totally just want them to efface all the differences and want me to fit in.
Right.
It is so tricky when another woman comes into the gym, because regardless of us having literally nothing in common with each other, we're not remotely the same size, our interests aren't the same, our levels aren't the same, maybe we speak the same language, this kind of thing. There's an automatic Sylvie, go work with this woman, which kind of makes sense. Like, in America, if you were like an all New York gym and you had one Thai guy and another Asian came in, you'd be like, go hang out with the Asian guy. It's just this weird, like, lazy brain, these two things go together.
It's not just lazy. It's also like a way to make them feel welcome, to have them, like, you're running a business also, and you want someone to feel like not a stranger.
Yeah, but there are a couple of things going on. Some things are like, that makes sense and that's good. And some of them are like, that shouldn't be the way it is. So one that's like, that makes sense and that's good, is that me working with another woman helps buffer this sexual issue. By not having one of the Thai boys come teach her, it takes the like complications of sexualizing out.
Yeah.
It also, and this took me a very long time, like I was like 5 days ago that I realized this, that when my crew would tell me, Sylvie, go teach her how to clinch, I'm actually being put in a higher position. Becoming a crew, becoming a teacher, is a status symbol. And he does not tell the boys to go teach one of the Western guys. They say just go clinch. Like, they become labor. Like, just go clinch with him.
Yeah.
I'm told to teach her. So I'm actually given status, which I had never really paid attention to before.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's okay. But the complicated part, in that these are some good things that are happening, is that there's simultaneously this bad thing that happens, which is that regardless of me having nothing in common with this person who just came in, I actually get brought down to their level, to more of like, you're just a woman now, which is like, it doesn't matter whether Sylvie's getting the training she needs in these days. Like, I don't get to clinch with the boys anymore. It's, you go deal with this person, you guys are together, we have women in the gym, women do this kind of thing. And if the woman is really different from me, if it's one of these women who are happy to have their sexuality in the space, I get kind of pushed into that pocket with her.
And keep in mind, if you guys don't know, she is the most experienced Western fighter in the history of Thailand, man or woman. 259 fights in the country. Like, there are very few people on the planet more invested in fighting than Sylvie. And still, in a gym that is very open-minded in many ways, like Pinu changed his mind about trans women. He was against them, and then Angie, he evolved
really
in her
embraced
example.
her.
But still, there are dividers going on along these gendered lines. I want to start and stop because this is going on. Continuing on. Well, there is a place I want to get to. I have a good point. But do you have other things you want to pull on this? It's such a big topic because it honestly has touched almost every moment of your time in any Thai gym in all these 9 years. Like, every single moment is conditioned by this.
I'm astounded by how different such small elements have an impact on something. So because I'm the only woman there, I kind of stand alone and have this thing going on all the time. And other women are compared to me who aren't training at the gym. Like, some other female fighter in Pattaya will be compared to me, kind of in this, like, we have the Sylvie, we have the Hulk kind of thing.
Okay.
The minute another woman comes, it's that we power suddenly comes.
Okay.
So if it's me and Caro in the gym, suddenly the like hard-working female thing is incredible. When we had the Muay Thai Summit at the gym, we would train after regular training, but there were at the highest point 18 women coming in and training with legends.
That we brought in.
And we were working so hard, and we would just we completely emasculated the men that were training before us in the regular session with how hard we were working. And I saw on my Thai trainers' faces how they'd come in, like Bum Rung, my trainer's father, was just watching how tough these women were and was just like, huh,
okay.
Women, like this is incredible.
This is the thing, is that these were these amazing women who were like, oh, they're like, oh, you're bringing women to Thailand to go train in Muay Thai? I'm on. When I'm buying my ticket. Like, these are amazing women
They didn't even see what Muay Thai was
like,
first.
dropped. I'm not sure about that. But they had incredible personal commitment to even the idea of the Muay Thai Summit.
And they threw themselves into it
And they
hard.
just came hard, every single one of them. And so unique, every one of them. But this is the thing. One reason why women have to train that hard is to balance out the books of the absence of their sexuality. Like, and we're not saying women need to be sexual in the gym. It's just the fact that if you are going to cut off the common mode of social power, you're being put at a cultural power deficit in a social space. Because the things by which you signal autonomy and authority in that space, that currency has almost only negative consequences.
It's like a currency exchange.
Yeah.
Where my cultural female identity is like, I have $1,000, right? Like,
Okay.
I'm comfortable, I'm okay. But I come into the gym space where my $1,000 has to be exchanged and doesn't hold against the currency that I have to operate in there.
But it's not only that. If you try to use
like I
those
can't
dollars,
afford anything.
bad things happen.
Yeah.
It's not that it has no value. Those notes mean something in that culture more or differently than they mean in your own culture.
Yeah. And as a Westerner, too.
Yeah, so you're a Westerner doing this, and it's like, there was an article written a long time ago, Laura Del Faro wrote about how, and it was probably an exaggeration, but she was basically describing how Western women are perceived as free prostitutes by some Thais. They're basically women that you could have sex with and not have to pay.
Right.
And that was a very extreme statement, but it does position how the Western female tourist is culturally perceived in some areas as a kind of like wanton, open, free, no strings attached ability to have sex with someone. And so when you come in as just take me seriously as a fighter, it is like you are swimming against a strong current that almost has nothing to do with the actual gym. It's the culture, it's the currents that are flowing in the culture. And keeping also in mind that women now are much further along in this path. Remember when Ann Quinlan came and watched you do pad work?
Well, who's Ann Quinlan?
You can tell.
You brought her up.
Yeah, I was about to tell.
Okay,
You jumped on me on that. Ann Quinlan was like one of the first Western women to ever train seriously in Thailand. She trained at Sitotong and
Sasaprapa.
Sasaprapa. But this is late 90s or 90s or something?
Late 80s. She was here early. She was 17 when she first came.
Yeah, I don't think it was in the 80s, but maybe. But she watched you do regular pad work. It was a private boxing private with Nung. It was a WBC champion.
It's in the Muay Thai Library, Napapon.
Yeah, and it was just basic boxing pad work, like combination holding, whatever.
Some instruction, yeah.
Yeah, some instruction. She said she had tears in her eyes.
Watching me being taken seriously because she had never been taken seriously.
In Thailand, this is a woman who was fucking badass.
Yes.
Like, she was like the best female fighter in the UK and maybe in the world at the time. And she came to Thailand and was very like,
oh, it must have been
she had
so
been so
hard.
brave. And the fact that she's crying, quiet tears, at just watching basic pad work.
Yep.
It just, so being taken seriously, also because the economics of Muay Thai gyms have changed. So you have to take women seriously because
Yeah.
that's what the business is.
Yeah.
But still, Nung was training you like a fighter, who was
Yeah.
training you like a woman. Just basic stuff like that, a generation before wasn't even possible.
Yeah.
So we're also saying that there are lots of opportunities, but this is a more personal story, which is about your own experiences of having to castrate yourself in social spaces where you are trying to become a great Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah. And I don't have a relationship with the gym where it's like I just go and do my training and I leave. Like, you actually have relationships with the people that you train with and the people who are training you. And so I can't be a whole person around these people who actually mean an incredible lot to me.
Yeah, but not only that, because of these networks of who you are and how you're treated, you actually don't train in the gym full time. You train yourself. You go and train yourself in gyms by yourself on a bag somewhere else. You have created a kind of constellation of training, which involves one-on-one training with Yo Kumpan, going to another gym and just training yourself where nobody fucking bothers you, and going into the social gym and getting some of that goodness of communal training. But part of why you have to create these alternate training spaces is so that you can explore your fucking whole person.
Yeah.
The whole person's relationship to Muay Thai. This is the thing. I don't know if it's too early to jump to this, but it's like, people are like, might be like, sexuality, everybody's got to put their sexuality on hold in the gym. Check your sexuality at the door. It's not a sexual space. Was that weird? Was that like right on?
It's like a script.
This is the thing. Sexuality is inherently woven into peacocking. Male fighters, in however they are, especially Yod Moy of Thailand, they develop their own version of peacocking.
Yes.
Muay Thai in Thailand is not about aggression. Like, a lot of people love the aggressiveness of Muay Thai. It's about dominance. It's about, this is why the sexuality is incredibly linked towards the dominance of Muay Thai. It's not that it's sexual, like I'm taking you as my sexual partner. It's the fabric of peacocking, of having pride and dominance over the space, which is going to pull in threads of sexuality. It just necessarily would. One of your favorite fighters of all time, who you've trained a ton with and has influenced you so much, is Karahat. He has the most amazing peacocking. It's not overt, it's subtle. But you watch his fights, there is sexuality in the ring. It's not sexuality towards his opponent, it's about the vitality he expresses.
Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about sexuality.
Well, there's even, just to take it out of a foreign culture, in case people think that there's some kind of difference between Thai and anything else. Conor McGregor, in his ridiculous suits and his millionaire walk and his pimping, whatever, calling someone a pimp is completely the male sexual dominance prowess that we get out
Totally.
of being a fighter. That's why a man looks at a male fighter and is like, I want to be that.
Totally.
You want to be in a band to get
and you-
chicks or whatever.
And you want another version, Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Well, Muhammad Ali is kind of like braggadocio and his like dominance over everyone. You cannot separate the sexuality from the dominance. They're woven together. And this is the fucking hard part. It's like, if you're doing Muay Thai, Thailand's Muay Thai properly, you have got to tap into what the Thais call sine, which is charm,
Charisma.
We were with, we've mentioned it before, but we were with, was it Charchai and Karahat? Yeah, two Yod Moy of different sports. But Karahat was complaining, wasn't it? Karahat complaining that the great fighters of today have no sine.
Mami Sine. Mami Sine.
And sine is this magnetism.
Yeah, that's a good
That
way to
when
say it.
you're a star, the fighter who had the most sine would maybe be Somar, one reason why people consider him the greatest. You have this magnetism that is expressing a kind of like, it's a power over people.
Well, it's star power too. It's
Yeah.
like a Hollywood leading man who has charisma versus one who's just kind of like, you put him here, you put him there, is like totally different.
Totally. But the cultivation of Yod Muay Thai involves the production of and the refinement of sine, of magnetism. All the great fighters had sine. When you are on a project of Yod Muay Thai, like you really want to truly be great, you cannot do that by getting the angle of your kick right. Like, you could practice that kick all day long. You need... Why are you laughing?
What
Sylvie?
is that movie? If only it were so simple.
I don't remember the name of that movie. Was it Jeremy Irons?
Yeah, it's Jeremy Irons is the, no. Oh, what is his name? Rafe Fiennes
Ray
is the
Fiennes,
director.
who is basically, I've never seen them in the same place together. But this is why we're actually bringing this up, other than it being painful for many, many years, is you're on the cusp of reaching for aspects of sine, of developing sine in your Muay, in your style, but in situations, in situations where you're castrated. So you, in a way, cannot develop magnetism.
Yeah.
Or the magnetism you have to develop is bizarro. Like it becomes a kind of like impersonation, like you can impersonate people or have elements of braggadocio or something, but the true flow of where sine comes from taps into sexuality.
Well, this is something that you mentioned the other day, which is that Kevin watches my sparring on video. I film my sparring and then Kevin watches it after.
Sparring
and
with
he
Yo
says,
Kumpan.
Kevin said that he sees my like authentic self with the like intact sexuality when I walk off of some really big move.
Yes.
And I'm not like sashaying or like whatever some stereotypical female sexuality being sexy kind of thing is. That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about sexuality. It's the like prowess energy. It's like,
yeah, and you're and
it's so hard to talk.
the reason why this is developing is that you've been sparring with him alone for over a year, almost every day. Even if that was being done in the gym, off hours, it would not evolve in the same way.
Because the space is
It's
so
because
controlling.
the space.
Yeah.
Even with no people
Yeah.
in the space, the fact that someone can walk through or is watching from a window or even the walls themselves.
It's just the space is already coded.
It's already coded in a certain way.
Yeah.
Instead, you spar at the stables or you spar at WKO, which is not coded for you, and it's like you're able to experience a fuller spectrum of who you are, of the whole person. And it's also taken a year. Like it's slowly coming out.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like not direct effort towards that one thing. Is that by solving all of these peripheral things, it solidifies that element.
I don't even
itself.
know what that means. That's very Sarah Lawrence.
It means that I have not spent a year being like, I'm going to reestablish my sexuality, like at all.
At all.
No.
It just gradually fills in the gaps because you're bringing more of the whole person of who you are to solving problems that are posed in sparring.
Well, okay, this is an element of this that taps into something else you want to talk about, which is habitus.
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll talk about it today, but yeah.
Can you explain really quickly what habitus is?
Habitus is a concept developed by Bourdieu, the French sociologist, and he was very interested in the ways that culture perpetuates itself through individuals. And basically, he talks about the habitus are all the ways that you as a child and then as a full person become conditioned to express the values of your culture. And many of them are very unconscious. Matter of fact, with habitus, he's mostly concerned with all the unconscious things that one does once you're conditioned, structured. So it could be things like, do you look someone in the eye when they're talking to you, or do you look away? Like, what posture do you use? And these become highly gendered and socioeconomically different. So habitus is basically the shape of the culture imprinted on you.
Right. So some super mundane examples of this would be like, Kevin met me at school. We went to the same college, and we'd been together for a while. He knew me as
Some beautiful butterfly over there.
He knew me as this person out in college, and then he came home with me for Christmas. Entering my parents' house with my brothers, I didn't notice any kind of difference, but Kevin was like, Sylvie just disappeared. Like, I just
It was like
just
you
like
became
vanished.
invisible, the invisible woman.
Which I'm not aware of, but that's the habitus of that space. So,
Yes.
For example, like schools that use uniforms, the minute you put on your uniform, you kind of assume this, like, now I'm in school mode, or like your work uniform, or how it like crushes your soul to put your, what are they called? The buttons and stuff, your flare.
Oh, flare.
That kind of thing. So that's habitus. The reason I'm bringing this up is that when you're shaped by things like this, so I've spent so much time in my gym becoming shaped by that space that anytime I enter that space, I take on that shape, whether I have other intentions or not.
Yeah.
So there are examples of like young queer kids move to New York and can become who they are because they've completely transplanted themselves from the habitus of where they grew up, where they have all of these like reinforcing pressures to be constrained in how they are.
Yeah.
So if I have all of these pressures, for example, one of the reasons I love Karchuk is that it's so outside of the kind of pressures I feel in Muay Thai fighting and scoring that I'm like, I don't have those pressures here, and I fight very differently, even though I don't necessarily need to fight any differently there. So one of the reasons that people might become very different when they like go from their gym in Kentucky to their gym in Udon Thani or something is that they've completely moved to a different habitus. So you're not who you literally aren't who you were in that other gym.
And you, as you change habitus, you are rewriting things that you brought with you.
Yes. And you will then be shaped by the new place over time.
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons why like you can't, unless you're on some like 2-year schedule, you can't just like keep
that's actually
moving.
But that's actually what we're talking about, is that we're talking about the castration that is necessary under the habitus of a Thai gym.
Yeah.
That you for 9 years have undergone this kind of like perpetual castration of yourself necessarily in order to have the opportunities of training and fighting and kind of being accepted within the space socially and not suffering consequences of getting pulled into whisper rumors and sexual. It's very cruel stuff that
Thailand's
goes
very
on.
gossipy.
Yeah, it's very hardcore. And it's like, you've undergone this habitus for 9 years, but as you're reaching for the dragon, not the turtle, something's got to give. Because this habitus does not let you reach Sine. Which, that magnetism, you can't have Yod Muay without Sine.
No.
You cannot have it. And you want an example of a fighter who has some Sine, pretty good Sine, is like Pechi Jha. Pechi Jha, though, was not raised in a Khmer Muay. She was raised with her brother in a family gym, and she basically was raised as a co-equal with her brother in training and everything else. And then she graduated out, and now she's in the national boxing team. she expresses her sexuality all the time as part of her confidence.
Which she has, I can't even call it an advantage, but she has this kind of like channel to go through, which is that she's Tom.
Yes.
So what that means, it's short for tomboy. It means a Thai female who usually is lesbian, but maybe not necessarily, who presents with masculine markers
Yeah.
in many ways. Some of them will use Thai personal pronouns are gendered. Some of them will go to the male personal pronouns. Some won't.
They take on D-girlfriend?
Take on D-girlfriend, which is like a femme lesbian girlfriend. But because Ji-ja, who grew up famous, like she's been famous since she was very little.
Yeah, she was a star when she was a kid.
For her to be able to start kind of broadcasting her sexuality as a Tom on her own social media is way less restrictive for the world she lives in than if she were Vivi doing the like hot girl want to be a singer thing.
But it ties very much in, her masculine marker stuff ties very much in with the dominance of Muay Thai.
And the way she fights.
And the way she fights. But this is what is necessary to get to the next level, is you have to fight with magnetism. And you cannot fight with magnetism if a big chunk of you is numbed.
Yeah.
And you have to bring that Sine into your training, into your sparring, into your clinching, into everything. And there's a problem. There's a problem there that hasn't even been figured out.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. So you want to talk about Turtle and Dragon now?
Oh, we're staying on Sylvie this whole...
Well, that's what we walked. I thought that was part of this whole thing.
All right, yeah. Restart the thing then.
Okay. You want to take a break?
Yep.
Oh, Sylvie loves this. So
If there's something I love, it's focusing on and talking about myself.
wait, tell them how you're a natural extrovert.
As a natural extrovert, this is just a real treat for me.
What character is that?
I can't remember. She had a show. It was a wonderful
She had a
show.
very like high-pitched weird voice, right?
Yeah,
As a comedian.
her natural speaking voice is very weird. It's like a child.
Yeah, like a child
And
voice.
then she'd put this one on to be like a sophisticated. It's
She
too bad
made
I
an
don't
alter
remember.
ego of herself, this comedian.
That this man fell in love with, and so she couldn't stop doing it.
It was very funny. Natural extrovert.
Yeah.
But looks like we're taking another Bones deep dive. We did it the last one. We didn't plan this one, but this is a good one.
Surprise!
This is a good one. So what? This subheading is called The Turtle and the Dragon.
Turtle and the Dragon. Do I have to tell the story?
You have to tell the story. This is really good.
So there's this, like, I don't know what you call it, like a parable. That's the Buddha and the poor man is what it's called. And so there's this poor man. He has nothing. He's very poor. And every night the food that he's kind of left out is less when he wakes up in the morning. And so one night he like stays up to look, and there's a mouse that's stealing the crumbs of his food overnight. And he gets really mad, and he tells the mouse, like, I have nothing. Why are you stealing from me? And the mouse says, it is your karma to only ever own 8 things. So I take from you to keep your karma in balance. And the poor man's like, this is some bullshit. So he decides he's gonna go see the Buddha and ask him, why is this my karma? And so, like all great parables, he has to go through this process of making his way to the Buddha. And on his way there, he encounters 3 characters who help him along the way. So the first one is a man whose daughter is mute, I believe. And they let him stay there overnight. And they say, oh, you're on your way to see the Buddha. Please ask him why our daughter is mute. Like, why do we have this karma? And he's like, okay. So then he goes to the next one. It's like a wizard, and he has to cross some kind of difficult thing to cross. And so the wizard carries him on his stick. He like flies him over. He's like, oh, you're on your way to see the Buddha. Ask the Buddha why, after I've been practicing every day, I still have not reached enlightenment. The guy's like, okay, check. The third one, and this is why we're the turtle and the dragon, is he comes upon a turtle, and the turtle says, ask the Buddha why I'm not a dragon like my father. Like, why am I a turtle and not a dragon? So the guy's like, all right. So the poor man makes it to the Buddha, and there's a lot of people there to see the Buddha, and so he's only allowed 3 questions. Each person is only allowed 3 questions, and even though he went there with his own, which would make a 4th question, he decides to just cut out his question because he was helped by these 3 characters along the way, and so he decides to ask their questions of the Buddha. And the Buddha answers all 3 questions of what needs to happen for each of them. And do I have to tell the whole story?
No, you can just tell about the turtle.
The important part for us,
for our discussion,
for us,
there's many lessons.
On his way back, he comes to the turtle, and he explains that why the turtle is not a dragon. He says, the Buddha said, once you let go of your shell, you will become the dragon. Just let go of your shell. And so in this kind of miraculous, what Sylvie can't quite do, the turtle is like, well, shit, that's easy, and just leaves the shell and becomes a dragon, and inside the shell are a bunch of pearls, and so the poor man like gets benefited all the way back. So we've been very impacted by this story, and so we think of me as the turtle trying to become the dragon, which is like my path towards Yodmoy. And I don't have to ask, why have I not become the dragon? Like, I know that I'm holding on to my shell all the time, and I see it, and I feel it, and I fucking clutch to it, and there are times that I start to become the dragon, and I'm like, no, back to the shell. And it's very painful and difficult. And so that's the turtle and the dragon. Shorthand, we say the turtle and the dragon.
Right. So immediately there's 2 shells that I can imagine. There's probably many. But one is literally in fighting. You, as a small fighter who fights all the time and really big people, you've developed a fighting style that is very closed and shelled protected. When you really get going in fights, there's literally, in boxing, the shell, like the Philly shell, the shell is a highly protected form of defense that allows you to like close the space, smother your opponent, grab them and clinch them and wreck them with knees. It's a very turtled Muay, and it works.
Yeah.
Like, you can beat really good fighters, much bigger than you, but it still is a shell.
Yes.
It's a turtle.
And I'm forced into it.
And you're forced into it. The other obvious part of it is what the whole first part of this podcast was about, which is the shell you've had to build around yourself.
My emotional
Your
shell.
emotional shell in the gym, which is, we've talked about it as castration, like cutting off a part of you that is extended, but it also, castration involves a kind of like closing within yourself, retreating into your shell for safety and protection and coherence. And
Which, again, Sylvie, not a natural extrovert.
Yeah.
So it's part of my self-protection. I'm a very like...
Well, this is the weird thing, is that we tell stories about ourselves, and one of the stories you tell is that you're not a natural extrovert, but you actually have lots of extroverted qualities that are just suppressed by how your life has gone.
Well, there's also, nobody is a pure introvert or a pure extrovert or like a pure anything. People are all balanced. This whole myth of a personality, like we string dots together and are like, that's my personality, but nothing is ingrained in us like at all.
Yeah,
but
okay, go.
There are, like when I'm with my brothers, when I'm with my family, Sylvie's very extroverted.
Yes.
Like when I have my little shell, in my shell, it's party time. Out of my shell, I'm just a fucking naked, gooey, whatever turtles look like without their shells. They're very like
You feel
delicate.
That way. You feel that way.
I don't like it, but in my shell, it's party time. Like in my shell, I'm very...
Yeah. It's weird to call that your shell, though, but yeah.
Well, in my safe space, like with my family or people who are close to me.
You have like an unbelievably wicked, hilarious sense of humor. You like have a kind of like broadcast of personality that a lot of people, including people who followed you for many years, have no idea. Like the most of what you know about Sylvie is a very constrained version of this part of you. Part of it is, though, back to the habitus, is that a lot of the extroverted components of you, the seeds of your potential magnetism, have learned that they have to stay inside a shell.
Yeah, but this is a thing that I think is important to say, because people are maybe coming to this from a broad like not on the same field that we're talking about. There
Okay.
may be people looking at this who don't have the like unspoken understandings that we have about what we mean when we're talking about this.
Right.
This does not mean there's something wrong with the turtle and something
Yes.
good about the dragon. It's a transformation that is part of my arc. It's just part of the path. And this is not a like, if you're closed down, want to be safe. You need to be safe for lots of reasons. I'm personally going through therapy with dealing with my traumas and things like this. That's like, I need to be
Yes.
safe. This is a real thing.
Yeah.
And an element of that we've talked about is that a dragon is not unshelled. It has scales. Like, it has its own armor.
Yes.
But it's not the shell that I'm trying to escape. Not everyone has to escape their shells. There's nothing wrong with turtles. Turtles can be turtles.
To agree with you, there's a shell for a reason. It works. It protects you. It allows a certain life that, like, we fucking love turtles. Wish we had one. Yeah. So, but this is this is
Race George.
where I might like. This is where I might disagree a little bit.
Oh, don't do it. I know Muay Thai.
Well, I would say that from the moment you encountered Muay Thai, which was the movie Ong Bak, everybody knows.
Kevin made me introduce myself at the beginning of this podcast and then thinks everyone knows that Ong Bak is the first time I saw Muay Thai.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we're not going to go into Ong Bak, but I believe, as someone who loves you and been with you for so long, that the reason why you've been so drawn to Muay Thai, and particularly the Yod Muay of Muay Thai, and had these powerful drives to like document the Yod Muay, these magnetic men, is because there is a part of you that's like the turtle that wants to be a dragon. And that the art form, the high level of art that you're reaching for, is a dream of yourself. And if a turtle does dream of becoming a dragon, like the one in the story, it's a beautiful thing for them to have the opportunity of that evolution.
I also,
Go for it, baby.
I don't know how to express this.
Well, try three ways.
These are like theoretical archetype turtle and dragon. Like,
yeah.
if I think of Yod Muay in my head that I know well, if I think of like Chmuk Pet, Diesel Noi, Karahat, Yod Kunpan, these are some of the most soft, kind, with everyone, with the exception of Diesel Noi, very soft-spoken men.
Yeah.
Very like humble. Diesel Noi is crazy, like polite, deferent. He's also very
Respectful, yeah.
says exactly what he thinks in the correct company.
Well, he's a hybrid.
Yeah, so these guys are they're very turtle-like in some senses. Like, Karhat's very shy. Yokun Pan's crazy shy.
Yeah.
But they are fucking dragons. Like,
Yeah.
they just turn on their thing. I remember I was, I was making fun of Karahat at some point. I was teasing him because he had flowers sent to him and he was like all chuffed about it. And then he found out it was from a guy who like lived up the street and he was really upset that it wasn't from like some hot girl trying to flirt with him or something. But I was asking him about his experience in the gym when he was training because he's so confident. Like, when Karahat's doing Karahat, he's so confident, but he's so quiet and shy otherwise. And I was like, how did you do that? Did you train that in the gym? And he was like, in the ring, when I was clinching and sparring, I was this, like, chest up, just totally like, I can wreck anyone. And he's like, then I come out of the ring, I go to the shower, I don't look at anybody, I'm totally just like in my shower, do my thing, come back out, eat, I'm fine. And then if I have to do something in the ring again, I like turn it on in the ring.
Yeah.
Which is that he's not doing some kind of like Jekyll Hyde alter ego. It's 100% him. Diesel Noi is 100% him in both of his completely opposite spectrum capacities. But it's not like state of turtle, state of dragon, state of turtle, state of dragon. It's this kind of like fluid movement between them, which is, I don't even know how you do that.
Right. But if if the dragon is not part of your training experiences, you cannot fight like a dragon.
Well,
You can't.
with my thing is I'm not like sometimes a dragon, sometimes a turtle. I can't be a dragon right now yet.
Yeah.
Like I'm always like holding that shell.
And there's aspects that have reached towards the dragon, like your cackle is quite famous in gyms, right? That's you just letting it flow, right?
That's because I'm a witch.
Yeah, well, let's not mix metaphors too much, but so we'll make it more concrete. Things you're working on with Yo Kumpan in your sparring is not being shelled up all the time, taking risks, taking angles, trying to move off rhythm. Like there's some concrete things that you're developing. You actually have a kind of like desire in your heart to be kind of tricky, which is very femur, and everybody's like, you're so Muay Khao. You've had to be Muay Khao. Ideally, you want to combine those two things to become the like armored dragon,
But that's
really.
the thing is it seems like a metamorphosis story.
Yeah.
It seems like a turtle becomes a dragon, but if you really pay attention to what that story is, what he does is lets go of the shell, and then he already is a dragon.
Yeah.
Like you're a dragon the whole time. It's totally Dorothy and her red ruby slippers.
Yeah.
You had the way to go home the entire time. It's not like if you do these things, you will transform into a dragon. It's you're a dragon in a shell. Let go of the shell.
Man, but that shell is there for a fucking reason.
Yes.
It's not some deficit.
Yeah.
It's because there are pressures. There have been a history of pressures on you, and then in your case, there's violence done to you. So there's fucking like calcium deposits of shell, but that thing is there because that thing had to grow. You had to grow a shell in order to survive in situations.
Well, that's also
and you grew a shell for Thailand.
Yeah, it's like if you have a raft to cross the river, and then you don't have to cross the river anymore. You cross the river. Don't carry the raft up the mountain. Like it doesn't serve a purpose anymore.
Yeah, but it's very hard because you're like, I might run into another river.
Or this carried me over the river. I clearly need it.
Exactly. Very difficult because you're not going to be not training in Thailand anymore. Like these aspects of sexuality and magnetism, you have to find a way to have the freedom to train them in Thai context.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, let's just make our own little gym
I can't.
so that you can just be magnetic on this other path. Because there's no way to really do it in a Kai Moi.
No.
Like, you can do it, but there are fucking consequences. And the consequences are long term. Like, if you don't know the culture, you don't even know the consequences.
Yeah, and even when you have a lot of experience and you know quite a bit of it, sometimes you'll just like run into a corner and you're like,
you don't
I
even
didn't know that
know
was
though.
there.
I mean, it's like, what was that horrible piece of gossip we ran into about some Western woman that she was like pregnant with the baby of some trainer? Do you remember? And it was like, I don't want to say who that was.
The reason that happened is because she had left one gym to go to the other. So the first gym started the rumor that she was a whore, basically.
But not only that, but pregnant. And it was like, these rumors are intense because Thais fucking love talking shit. People don't realize that in the land of respect and smiles.
Well, people who've been here for a long time.
Yeah, but people who are like, Muay Thai is all about respect.
No.
So what else, is there more that we can or should say about the turtle and the dragon? Other people facing turtle dragon type things? I feel like a lot of women who've suffered the consequences of their sexuality, maybe not in gyms, but in life. Like, I remember in New York, we were like, a lot of women in New York, in the New York scene, this was many years ago, were like, they're remarkably like attractive women culturally, like as a group.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are these women so drawn to Muay Thai?
Yeah.
And this was 10 years ago. This isn't a social
It's like
study,
13
but it
years
was
ago.
like, it was stark, but
Yeah.
it's like women are drawn to Muay Thai, I think, because it allows them the opportunity to explore parts of themselves that are suppressed or have negative consequences in their lives.
Yeah, and I think also women who are attractive and kind of treated in the world as attractive women, you get shit put on you. Like the habitus of being an attractive woman is that you're kind of like, power is taken from you, even though your attractiveness is a power to itself, but you don't have full control over it. So this being able to hold your own and have aggression, like to direct your aggression, being a beautiful woman makes you fucking angry in a lot of a lot of realms.
Yeah.
And to not just be put in this like, go be quiet and looked at over here is like
Yeah.
you're still being looked at, but you have power in it.
Yeah, and but I feel like if you're drawn to Muay Thai, as a woman in particular, because of the gender differential, you are trying in some way probably to go from turtle to dragon. I don't know what your shell was and what your dragon is, but that very disjunction between the real you and who's the real you, right, is because you're under a process of transformation. The understory or the longer term story is if you come to Thailand as a woman, your sexuality becomes very problematic.
Yeah.
And so your journey to become a dragon could become problematic.
Yeah, like you're an established trail runner, come do it on sand dunes. Much harder.
I don't quite know, but
It's okay.
I think I know what you're saying. That's pretty good. Should we move to the next one, or do you have
Yes.
anything else to say on
No,
that
let's
one?
talk more about me in some way.
Natural extrovert.
It's just
You guys gotta find that
just a
one.
real treat for me. Kevin's gonna spearhead this.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, go.
Okay. Are we bringing this in from the Phuket thing? Phuket announcement, or?
You are starting it. You come from whatever angle you want.
Okay, well, we've used this term already in this podcast, Kai Moi. In Thailand, there's a difference between a Kai Moi and a gym. Would that be fair to say?
And in Thai, you use the loan word gym. You say yim.
Is the word. A Kai Moi is maybe closer to the English word camp,
Boxing camp.
but we talked about actually in our last podcast too, about as kind of like traditional, we also talked about traditional Muay Thai gyms, authentic Muay Thai gyms are, basically we're all referring to Kai Moi, which is a way of raising young Thai fighters to become stadium champions or local champions or whatever it is. But it's largely an extended family kind of hierarchy, sometimes literally organized around a particular family and their children, and then more kids from the neighborhood come. But it's a general way of progressing in Muay Thai from youth to stadium.
And it is
fighting.
it is the functional structure of investing in a fighter, or maybe like 12, and then 1 or 2 will kind of like
Yeah.
get really good, and you're basically it is a self-propelling structure of making fighters, and those fighters then support the gym, rather than a commercial structure, which is you pay for training and it helps the gym run.
Right. So I'm not even sure why we're covering this topic other than it's interesting.
Well, I thought we were covering it because of the Phuket thing.
Okay.
Because Muay Thai is changing.
Well, I'm trying to find a line on this that I'm actually like interested in and excited about. Mostly because I've been writing about this on the forum a lot. And so
Well-
I feel like I've been like digging into the details of this. So I'm kind of like, Thailand originally was all Kai Moi. That was, and then sometimes there were like powerhouse Kai Moi, which would then buy the contracts of good fighters from other parts of the country and create a kind of like Bangkok Kai Muay, where kind of developed fighters would develop further, right?
Right.
But it was only Kai Muay. And then Westerners started coming and kind of like participating in the Kai Muay in the 90s.
Yeah, and it was kind of confusing. We experienced this when we first came to Chiang Mai and we're at Lana. And Lana has been a gym that has Westerners coming for 20 years by the time we got there.
It was started with the Westerner.
But there was still this confusion among the Thai trainers that are like, this person's coming and training, their body is good, and they don't want to fight.
Right.
It made no sense that a Kai Muay is like, we produce fighters. A gym doesn't have to produce fighters. It may, but it doesn't have to. And there was still, even at that point, with the trainers being like, I don't understand why you're doing this. It's like...
Yeah, and they had been exposed to Westerners for a very long time, but in their head, they are of the Thailand of Muay Thai.
They grew up in Kai Muay,
yeah, and this to them was still a Kai Muay.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter was, Lana was a really interesting version of a Kai Muay and a gym, a commercial gym, layered on top of each other.
Which actually had two different names. The gym had a Lana Muay Thai, and then the Kai Muay was Giat Busaba.
Yeah, and all the Westerners took it on the Lana Muay Thai fight name, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a real privilege to be part of that. It was actually at the tail end of the greatness of that gym.
Yep.
It was probably 5 years before us when it was really going
Mm-hmm.
in a kind of like amazing hybrid. An analogy that regularly appeals to me when thinking about this would be a ranch in America, like a working ranch, where you basically, the purpose of the ranch is to raise cattle and sell them to the market, and all the ranchy things of like riding on horses, and
They serve a function.
like everybody who's a cowboy in the ranch is working.
Yeah, and
they're
like
working. It's a business, but really it's a way of life.
Yes, and you learn to lasso because you actually have to catch a fucking like calf that's gone off
Totally.
in the wrong direction.
Like nobody is learning anything that's not part of the production of a cattle ranch. And there are lots of cultural things going on too. The habitus of the ranch, like how you eat your beans by the fire. Like, I don't know what it would be.
How many gallons is the bucket of your hat?
Yeah, but there's tons of habitus of cowboyness around a working ranch. It would be a little bit like, let's just say, take a foreign culture, but if Japanese
Tourists
adventure tourists were obsessed with
ranching.
cowboy ranching, and then would come to, let's say,
a functioning ranch,
let's say in the 1960s or 70s, right? And they wanted to learn how to be a cowboy or be a cowboy. And so in the beginning, there's only a few adventure tourists who want to become a cowboy, and they actually work on the ranch and whatnot. But they are fairly well off, wealthy-wise. They don't actually have to work there. So among the people of the ranch, they're like, what's going on here, right? But you're integrated to some degree, but let's just say this process of adventurism keeps growing, and suddenly the ranch realizes that it's a working ranch, but also we can start cowboy school. And so there's a part of the ranch which is you go work with the real cowboys and you become a cowboy, and people pay to become a cowboy, basically.
To do cowboy things.
To do cowboy things, and which involves real cowboy shit, that you go and direct the cattle and go on a cattle drive and whatever else. That kind of is a rough approximation for me of the disjunction between a Thai Kai Muay and a Thai gym. Now things have really accelerated even from the time that we've been here.
Yeah, where there's like mostly gyms now.
Well,
in the areas that people come to.
Yeah, but the cattle ranches have gotten way into the business of cowboy school and cowboying. Like, there's real cattle work being done. People are fighting.
Japanese tourists come and open cattle ranch tourism spots in Nevada or whatever. Like, they're not even owned by real ranchers anymore.
What are you talking about?
talking about gyms here that are owned by Westerners who are producing the tourism gym.
Yeah, that's true. That Thais are no longer the only ones making Muay Thai gyms. So now you have like we're not picking on the Japanese, but it's a foreign enough culture, and they do kind of romanticize other cultures just like Americans do. But it would be like now there's a Japanese cattle school, like cowboy school, right next to a more like traditional cattle ranch. And there's still cattle stuff being done. There are fighters being produced, fighting on shows. But now you even have like, in Thailand, you now have entertainment Muay Thai, which is a form of promotion, which basically is designed so Westerners can win. They basically make Thais so they cannot back up. They don't use traditional scoring. They often make the Westerner much physically larger.
It's also not only about the outcome of the fight, but it's people who don't know how to watch Muay Thai or understand what's happening in a traditional scoring, like the clashy 3-round fight, because it's just...
Yeah, well, I'm saying there's now a commercial promotional movement in Thailand to build on the cowboy school concept, right? That you've trained all these Japanese cowboys, now they have to do something. Maybe that's like rodeos. Like there are rodeo shows where you can show your cowboy skills and your calf roping, and that becomes its own subculture. But I guess the point in this point really isn't that one is better than the other, but to just draw fairly firm distinctions between the two realities, the two purposes. And when you go to a Muay Thai gym, which is a business, and there are still gyms that are kind of hybrid. They still produced Thai ring fighters, and they still have a adventure tourism business. And the other cultural interesting thing is that all the trainers at a Muay Thai gym grew up in Khmer Muay.
Yeah.
So they bring the culture and practices of Khmer Muay into the gym. It's not completely fake. Although more and more Westerners are like becoming pad men, which is kind of a fucking amazing. But
this is also a weird thing, is that there is not a complete overlap of how a tourism gym and a Khmer Muay trains. Like they're not identical to each other. So there are trainers who have spent many years in a gym holding for tourists, and they can't come back to a Khmer Muay and hold for a like up and coming Thai fighter. They can't mold the way that they do if they were doing their Khmer Muay stuff the way that they were raised.
Are you thinking about specific people? Oh, okay. Yeah, the practices in a cowboy school become different than they are in the Khmer Muay, in the ranch, because a lot of people come to cowboy school, they want to learn cowboy stuff, which means you have to articulate how to be a cowboy, and you develop mechanisms of teaching and verbalizing. A big thing about verbalizing things, because sometimes people come for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months. They're not coming for 3 years necessarily. So the practices, the methods by which Muay Thai is disseminated in cowboy school become much more attuned to the needs of the clients, right? And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Just note that it's very different. In the Thai Khmer Muay, there's almost no verbal instruction. There's no technical breakdowns.
Yep. And if you like ask a bunch of questions, they're like, "Why would I verbalize this? Just do it."
Yeah, but that's designed.
Remember Wong with the kick? He's like, "Your kick is fine.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like explain how to kick because it's fine."
Yeah, and that. So the first thing is to not let these two things be confused with each other. And the other one is the Khmer Muay is part of the social fabric that gave birth to and maintains the Muay Thai of Thailand. The gym, the cowboy schools, might be a very important dimension of also maintaining the Muay Thai of Thailand because it has an influx of income and foreign interest and therefore pride in Muay Thai for the Thais. But it's also shaping the Muay Thai of Thailand.
Yeah, it's...
Big sigh from Sylvie.
I don't know. I think that the complicated thing is that the ratio of them used to be very different from how it is now, and a true Kai Muay can't really compete with the way that Muay Thai is shaping in terms of stadium Muay Thai and what you're producing.
I think we have to stop. It's raining now.
You didn't notice that 2 seconds ago?
I did, but it looks like it's not stopping.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have to stop on this. Does it seem okay?
Yes. What thought were you on?
You were saying, oh, we're continuing. We had a little bit of a,
Rain situation.
what is that, like a sun shower?
Yeah.
You were saying that the ratio is changing
Yeah.
between Kai Muay and Muay Thai gym.
Yeah, this was something that when we first came to Petrungrung 7 years ago, the Chonburi, which is the province that we live in, the like official sport authority of Chonburi was going around and looking at Kai Muay as opposed to the tourist gyms. And in Chonburi, only 2 at that time qualified still as Kai Muay. There are a lot of like tourism gyms in Pattaya now.
Well, if there were only 2 Kai Muay 7 years ago, they're all
Maybe
gyms.
only Ramban now.
Do you
'Cause
think
Ramban
Rambo
didn't-
is official?
He didn't exist when that happened, so
Well, what were the 2?
it was at the time still Sidyotong, which not anymore, and
Yeah.
Petrungrung.
And this was an important, like, this is an actual legal designation within Thai, like tax code and whatever. Being officially a Kai Muay or a gym business was a distinction.
Right, which maybe I could figure out what that legal distinction is. It might have like tax situations or something like that.
But it is interesting that there is an actual official distinction between the 2.
Yes.
And that there really are no more Kai Muay in Pattaya.
Yeah.
Like Petrungrung was evolved to
Which-
more of a business gym.
Which was reiterated in this. I wrote a short article that went out in the newsletter about this big meeting that they had on Phuket. They're trying to like create Phuket as like a hub of Muay Thai, which under COVID is a perfect opportunity for this to happen because under the Phuket Sandbox, which is how people were able to come back into Thailand, Phuket has a lot of, what are the words? Permissions that the rest of Thailand doesn't have right now.
Is that now or previously?
Still now.
Okay.
But they're basically, the Phuket gyms are getting together and trying to create like a board or a committee where they can kind of like work together, like a co-committee, something like this.
I don't know.
Which is interesting because the competition that Kai Muays have within each other, because they actually have contracted fighters, versus the competition that gyms have with each other, which is don't take my trainers, don't take my clients, like paying customers,
Right.
is very different. So to have the now, Phuket is a good example because it's mostly gyms. To have Thailand becoming more and more and more these commercial gyms, the kind of competition they have with each other is different from the kind of competition they had with each other with like
Well,
fighters.
many of these gyms are foreign or partially foreign owned, so they're not bound by the same like social hierarchies and glue that control Thai Kai Muay. That's one aspect of it. But in this meeting, which is actually a kind of extraordinary meeting, I don't know if they've had other meetings of this kind, but you really don't have a regional Muay Thai gym collective approach to tourism and fighting. That what seems to be happening with the Phuket gyms is they're like, tourism has taken a huge hit, and Muay Thai has taken a huge hit for over a year now because of COVID. And because we have this leg up because of the sandbox, when people start coming up, we want to present a unified concept where we're not quite competing so badly against each other, where we make Phuket a destination, a Muay Thai
Like,
destination.
we want people coming to Phuket rather than I want people coming to my gym.
Kind of. There's that element of it.
I mean, you still want people coming to your gym, but you're working to get people to Phuket.
And so in this meeting, there was a distinction between Kai Moi and gym.
Like, it was laid out, not with descriptions, but they distinctly said Kai Moi and gym as two separate things, which had come 2 days after I was asking Karahat a question about where he was going to go, and I used the word Kai Moi to refer to a gym he was going to go to, and he corrected me and said it's a gym.
Yeah, that's not a Kai Moi.
Which was kind of the first time that I realized it was not interchangeable.
Really? You never realized that?
I think of them as not interchangeable, but I use them interchangeably.
Like there's a stronger distinction in the Thai mind.
when I first started contacting legends for the Muay Thai Library, I would say this word PSET, which means special training. Like, will you give me special training? And then I realized that the word is the loan word private, and I had been using them interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. So it's similar to that.
Similar to that. What is the difference? Or is it not worth?
It's not worth going into.
Okay. Okay. I feel like we're a little bit stalled here.
Well, do you want to transition into this
No.
gym thing?
Yeah, not yet. Well, was it in the previous Muay Thai Bones we talked about this ownership of sponsored fighters? You seem like you're irritated with me.
Because this is what I was going to transition to, and you said no.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want to like bring something up before that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a Bones, right?
Yeah, it was about the growing value of Western fighters.
Yeah. So the growing value of Western fighters in Thailand, we did a Muay Thai Bones on this actually as a subject. It's a really good one. You should go listen to it. But this growing value of Western fighters is actually in the context of the growing value of the Muay Thai gym as opposed to the Kai Moi. That more and more of Thailand's Muay Thai is devoting itself commercially to the Muay Thai gym scenario.
Because there are more promotions now that the gym can put fighters on.
Yeah, but the promotions, that's chicken and the egg. The promotions developed to support the gyms in a certain regard. That they are, I feel like we're wrestling on this a little bit.
No, we're not.
Okay. Why don't you go to where you want to go?
No, this is
No,
interesting.
go ahead.
Well, the reason I think this is interesting, what you're talking about,
Okay.
and the chicken or the egg kind of thing, is that a Kai Moi would allow Westerners to come and train and do their thing, but they were not a focus. They could help pay the bills of like running the gym in general, but there's not a lot you can do with a Western fighter who comes in, because you can't put them in the same kinds of shows that your young Thai fighters who are like being brought up
Like
to
John
go
Wayne
to
Parr is a
Lumpinee.
really unusual example of somebody who came into a Kai Moi, a real Kai Moi, and actually got funneled into like King's Birthday shows,
Yes.
fighting top fighters.
Yes.
But this was very rare.
Yes.
Usually if you had a Farang in the Kai Moi, they are the least important person
Yes.
of all, and they might not even get full training. Like, it was that person over there.
Yes.
But as the business model has evolved and changed, that person who had been the last person you'd think of, 5 of them now are some of the most focused people are in the gym.
Right, and it's because these promotions have come up that want Westerners, that are like structured around Westerners.
Entertainment Muay Thai.
There's suddenly a value to having a bunch of Westerners in your gym. You're like, yes, we can put them on these shows, whereas you couldn't do anything with them on the kind of shows that you were used to putting your fighters on because it was so separate.
Yeah.
Now Thai fighters are on these kind of shows as well. They're of a different class than if you were like building Channel 7 or Omnoy or whatever fighters, but it's way more mixed within a single gym space now, which it wasn't before.
Yeah, your trainers would be on these shows sometimes. It's just it's amazing. Okay. One of the interesting things, this is why before we get to the ownership of the gym and whatever, one of the interesting things in that article you wrote up, which was they were calling for fights to be fought in a very particular way. And they were like, and this is so striking, if people don't think this Kai Moi to gym transformation is not affecting Muay Thai, this collaboration of Phuket gyms were like, let's fight in a way that people who do not know Muay Thai can watch it.
Yes.
So basically, we have to take Muay Thai, the actual Muay Thai of Thailand, and translate it for a tourist who doesn't understand Muay Thai at all.
And you're fighting in this way for the ultimate purpose of attracting more Muay Thai tourism to your gym.
Yeah, and they must be thinking not only people who are coming for Muay Thai tourism, but they're also coming for the beach and they want to go see a Muay Thai fight. So you basically, as a Westerner in these gyms, there is a call, and who knows, but there's a call to develop a Muay, a style of fighting, which not only can do well on these entertainment Muay Thai shows, which are designed for Westerners to win with no backwards fighting, minimal clinch, and whatnot. So they've radically changed the rules of Muay Thai, but they're also saying, in general, we should start producing a Muay that is appealing to people who don't even understand Muay Thai.
Yeah, so I had used this example with Kevin the other day when we were talking about this, but to explain what we mean when we say someone who doesn't know how to watch Muay Thai or whatever this thing is, I don't know how to watch American football. I don't understand the scoring. I don't know like what the strategies are in any way. Like if they move the thing a couple of meters and people around me are like, ooh, this is exciting on the starting of whatever, I'm like, I don't know why that's exciting. I don't know what's going on. So to make football entertaining to someone who doesn't understand the strategy or scoring or what they're watching when they're watching football, I don't know what I'd be looking at. Cheerleaders or lights
No,
or
you would just
whatever.
turn it into people smashing into each other.
More smashing.
More smashing. Just smash, smash.
Or basketball,
smash.
like fancy dunking. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But, and I actually took your analogy, and on Twitter I put, chess needs to be made more watchable for people who don't understand chess. Yeah. Which means basically
Put
no
glitter on the
longer
queen.
no longer chess. Yeah. It's no longer chess. Yeah. You basically have to change the rules, and then basically you have to change chess into checkers.
Yeah.
Like, I understand they're hopping over each other and taking pieces.
This is the thing, though, and I'm just going to interject this. This
Okay,
maybe
good.
isn't even part of the thing. I've gone to Rajadamnern with people who don't understand Muay Thai a few times. They're either friends of mine. I went and I filmed with Andrew Zimmern for one of his shows.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And so I was mic'd telling him all of these different things. But so I was like explaining to him how it's about dominance, not aggression. When I went with my friend Robin, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Now it's round 3, so this guy's going to want to try to like pull up where he's been kind of sandbagging. And the people in the seats around me, and these are like VIP Western seats. These are not people who are like, I love Muay Thai, I'm going to go watch it. These are people who are like, I'm in Thailand, I want the Muay Thai experience. They would all kind of like lean in and try to hear what I was saying, and they would get more out of the fights while I was talking. They wanted to understand what they were looking at.
But they would have no way.
What I'm saying is people are not like, I don't want to know how Muay Thai works, make it so that I can watch it without having to learn anything.
Yeah.
They want to know how to watch it. When I watch football with you, I don't like football. When I watch football with you, when you explain to me what's happening, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
When you don't like soccer, when you watch soccer with me and I'm complaining about the passing,
Yeah.
you like get in on it. You're like, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is that when tourists or people on Facebook scrolling, they don't really have a mechanism by which to understand the rules and why it's exciting to someone who understands the rules.
But that's what commentators are for. We used to really like, who was it?
There's no commentators on live.
Because
stuff.
we don't understand jiu-jitsu, and we'd be like, I understand what the strategy is, like, because of the commentating.
Yeah, but that's not really. Well, what Muay Thai is facing is there is no explanatory process.
Yeah.
Which is to say, okay, that's the state of things, and oh my God, it would be nice if one championship announcers actually knew what
they were
was
talking
going
about.
on. They seem like nice people and experienced in other things. It would be nice. But I understand they're kind of hype men. Given that there's no explanatory bridge, Muay Thai is facing a stylistic transformation,
Yep.
of which this Phuket co-op, and who knows, everybody there probably could have been like, whatever, like been to the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. But there are these attempts to really transform Muay Thai, and this is going to become magnified because of COVID, because they want to get the tourist back. Thailand is incredibly dependent upon the tourist dollar.
And Phuket especially.
Phuket especially. And so the entertainment Muay Thai, the Farang has a chance to win model of fighting is going to start proliferating even more in the gyms of Phuket, but also all over the gyms of Thailand, because these promotions now have become interlinked with the financial viability of Muay Thai gyms all across the country. Not Khai Muay, but Muay Thai gyms. So right now there's developing a kind of split personality of what Muay Thai is. The Khai Muay, traditional Muay Thai, which is much more complex. It's much more like chess. And then you have promotional entertainment Muay Thai, which is much more like checkers and meant for eyes of people who do not know anything. This is a kind of battle.
Yes.
Right? So we want to take a little detour into this because we wanted to answer this question, right, about Khai Muay ownership. Do we want to go into that? Like moving from one gym to another?
Oh, well, in our last Muay Thai Bones, we talked about the growing value of Western fighters, which we just talked about again in terms of like, before it was just kind of like people came and went or whatever. Gyms are starting to invest more in their Western fighters.
Make them stars on these promotions.
Make them stars, kind of get recognition tied in with this fighter and things like that. And we talked about a particular case of a very well-known gym and a fighter, a Western fighter who went to a different gym, and this owner was upset because the response was not that of the correct operations and protocol of a Khai Muay, which is a contracted fighter, needs to be sold to another gym, and there needs to be agreements and things like this, but Westerners are not contracted. So it was basically you need to apply legal protections to gyms with Westerners, whereas before it was just...
They were asking for legal protection, right?
Something that we thought about after we'd talked about that is that it came off very much in what we were talking about, because we were talking about this change in how Westerners are valued. It came off as though we were saying that this Westerner was totally in the wrong, and we felt like this was not actually...
Well, we weren't talking about a specific Westerner. It came off that Westerners that move... This is about sponsored fighters,
yes,
especially, that you spend some time at a 1 year, 2 year at a gym. They don't charge you.
Right.
They sometimes feed you and house you. They give you their gym name. You go on these promotions. They take a percentage of your winnings. Like, this feels like you're a real fighter, right? When you get a sponsored fighter, feels authentic, but you're really kind of in a hybrid kind of Khai Muay Thai gym setup.
Yeah, so weird.
And it kind of came off because we were talking about the Khai Muay heritage of gym practices, and we were focusing on the Khai Muay dimension of that and less on the Muay Thai gym aspect.
Right.
Because
and these places are like an estuary where you have salt water and fresh water coming into contact in one area, and it's like, this is very complicated because these things don't necessarily go together all the time.
And the Western fighter doesn't always understand fully how they're being seen,
right,
and the obligations, the moral or social obligations that are upon them. But we didn't want to come off, we might have come off, and we didn't hear this from anybody, just we were reflecting on it, as being kind of like an advocate for these gyms that are like, raise up these sponsored fighters and then they lose their fighter.
Right.
But there's a whole nother reality to this.
Which is that you are not a Thai fighter, and the realities of what the training and the gym are may not be supporting what you actually need.
after 1, 2 years, 3 years, very often you will hit a ceiling of training in that gym because you become slotted in a certain way. All the trainers believe you're capable of only certain things. Trainers often get bored or tired of dealing with a particular Westerner, and you can find yourself in a sponsored situation where you don't feel like you're either getting the fight opportunities or you're getting the training that developing you in the way that you want to be developed. And you should move.
Yeah, we as Westerners, when we come here, even if we spend a great deal of time at one gym and we feel very loyal to and devoted to and all these things, we are not a Thai boy who from age 12 to 21 are in a gym being developed.
Yeah.
A lot of us have much less time here. Some people come 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
And if you get slotted into this kind of like, this is as far as you're going to go, you don't have the same life cycle as a Thai.
That's a good way of saying it.
And
life
so
cycle.
you, of course, you want to conduct yourself in the correct, most respectful methods as you possibly can, given what you want and need out of your experience. You want to be very respectful, but sometimes those limitations will compromise your ability to have the life cycle you want.
Totally. And I almost feel like it's almost inevitable that that will happen because of the life cycles of gyms and the way that trainers experience. We wrote an article a long time ago, the crew syndrome, where a crew is like all into you and like training you up and bringing this
I
potential.
think we did a Bones on that, an early Bones
Maybe.
in the car.
I'll make you look for that one for the notes. But the crew then, when you don't perform whatever they taught you, you're not fighting in the style that they supposedly have imprinted on you, or you start losing, then they start distancing themselves from you. They're like, it's not my fault, it's the student.
And this happens to Thais too. This is not a like
100%.
Thai Western thing.
But the Thai has no move.
Yep.
They're contracted.
Yep.
It happens to Thais a lot.
Yep.
Crews will just be like, it wasn't my training, it was them.
Yeah.
They're not one, or they're essentially some way. And I think if you stay long enough in these kind of like social networks, you're going to come up upon the ceiling of what you can be, just because there's a kind of conservativeness in Thai Muay culture.
Yeah, there's traditions and methods of doing things, and they're not about the like freedom of the fighter.
Yeah, and they're also not about necessarily maximizing a fighter's capabilities.
Yeah.
Even Thai fighters.
Yeah.
Thai fighters are like pushed into styles or things that are often not even great. From Johnson famously was like, I didn't want to be wooden man. I
wanted to be femur.
I had so much Muay Thai in me I wanted to do. And he was like, they told me to be wooden man, and so I was wooden man.
Even Yotsunan, Sidiotong loved Muay Thai, and they were like, you have a better chance of becoming famous as a boxer, be a boxer. And
yeah, you have heavy hands.
Yeah.
And it came like that.
Yeah.
But this same thing happens to Westerners too, that you get kind of slotted for what is you're capable of. Thais very often, to be very broad about it, don't have the same generative concept of possibilities.
Yeah.
They tend to think in types.
They also want consistency over like,
What does that mean?
maybe this will work. It's like, if doing this wins you fights, you do this.
Yeah.
Because there's gambling, there's money, there's all this stuff. There's
Yeah.
no like, see if you can develop this other thing. It's like, be consistent.
Keep going along this proven path.
Yeah.
Which actually is to the detriment of Muay Thai in the last few decades. Thailand's Muay Thai, because of gambling, a lot of fighter styles became very narrowed and one-dimensional. You became known as a certain kind of fighter, and risk-taking was limited. So you're kind of stepping into some of these long-term currents. So that's that. Are you ready to go to the last topic?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. Last topic. Can you do this one?
What?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Okay, I'll lead.
That's right.
Makes you happy. So, in some ways, this is just like a little side story in Muay Thai. But for me, personally, it was not just that. Fairtex announced that it's going to be bringing MMA to Lumpinee Stadium. And, oh man, for some reason, this I'm not saying this is some terrible thing, but for some reason, this was on the back of Go Sport Promotions bringing in women into Lumpinee. Totally historic change for Lumpinee. And along with women, unfortunately, we have a whole podcast on it, is also bringing in 3-round fights instead of 5-round fights. We're not quite sure on the scoring of these kinds of 3-round fights, if they're going to do entertainment scoring or lean towards entertainment scoring, or they're just going to do traditional scoring in 3 rounds. But there are fights now happening in Lumpinee Stadium that would never have been in Lumpinee Stadium before, including women being there. It's a part of an entire internationalist vision of the new Lumpinee that is anti-gambling. Basically, we're not going to even, there's a possibility there won't even be ties in the stadium, in the audience. The audience might be just bussed in Chinese tourists.
I was showing Kevin a post in Thai that was basically, it's a Thai news source, and it was how do I say this? We don't know that this is Lumpinee. We just highly, highly suspect this is Lumpinee, but they're I cannot believe they're going to sell tickets for 3,200 or 2,800 baht. Who could go see this? And the point is, not Thai people. Thai people are not going to be spending that money to get tickets, which means you're basically pricing out Thai audience.
Well, they're not even pricing out. They literally have said at times no ties.
Yeah, literally, if you show up, they're no.
I don't know. It was one of the thoughts that were being floated early on in the reformation of Lumpinee Stadium, that maybe there'll be no Thai audience, really. I don't know how that would even be enacted. But the idea is, as long as you have a stadium full of Thai people with cell phones,
there will be gambling.
There's gambling. Yep. What are you going to do? Throw people out who put up the hand signals or something?
They had talked about when Lumpinee was still in the studio. It had not moved into the main arena again because of COVID. It was still up in the studio. Big Dang, who is in charge of Lumpinee, was saying that people had to check their phones in.
Yeah, but this is production crew.
In order to stop gambling.
Yeah.
This was their...
So they are on a full-on commitment to kind of reformulating Lumpinee. So the Fairtex announcement, which is to bring Muay Thai promotion, but also MMA all genders.
Makes sense because it's Fairtex. Fairtex has one fighters. They're this is their brand.
Yeah. Ostensibly, what Fairtex is proposing, is to bring one championship into Lumpinee Stadium. One championship has had tremendous success, maybe not financial success, some question about their books, but cultural success.
Popularity success, reputation success.
Yeah, they've spread the brand of Muay Thai.
Yep.
By changing the rules of Muay Thai, but also bringing in very famous names, top older fighters, many of them older fighters of Thailand, to raise the level of skill. Mm-hmm. And they've done it's had a huge impact, and it likely has influenced Go Sport and even brought women into Lumpinee Stadium. Fairtex seems, who is very closely involved with this. Oh, baby, look at this.
It's harder than it was before.
I don't know. What should we do? I don't want to get wet.
Okay. You have to stop it. Resuming.
Okay, so we had a big downpour of rain. We're resuming on our last topic.
Fairtex, MMA, Lumpinee.
Yeah. But I got a new shirt on. I had to put a dry shirt on. I have a light gray Diesel to go with the dark gray.
And a Sylvie Chemical X.
Yeah, that's the one I have, but I had to change my shirt. Basically, I only wear Sylvie stuff and Legend stuff.
Which supports the Legends and Crews in the Muay Thai Library.
Thank you, baby. Filling in the details. That's what I like. Okay, so we were just talking about one championship, Fairtex, this promotion bringing MMA into Lumpinee Stadium. But as I was sitting there, I don't know, we were taking an hour break, 45 minutes. there was something I wanted to return to about Sine. If you're jumping in at this point, go back and listen to the story of the turtle and the dragon. Now, this thing about Sine and charm, I just wanted to insert this, even though this has nothing to do with MMA, is that asterisk that the concept of charm in Thai culture, that charm is about a kind of magic. It's when someone has a magical quality or powerful.
Yeah, your choice of magnetism was good in that
sense. Yeah, but it literally, concepts of Thai power have to do with charm. And even in the Western tradition, the concept of charm, just a person having charm, goes all the way back to being able to charm someone, to put a spell on someone. Enchanting, exactly. So in the Thai belief systems of what power is, having authority and charm is magical, really. And this is the reason why I thought you'd find it a little bit interesting, is we were just talking about that in the older aspects of Thai culture, women are thought to have a sexual power. Basically, that the behavior of men is thought to be somewhat excusable if they become overwhelmingly attracted to someone.
Well, it's the same way that alcohol intoxicates you, and therefore you're in this altered state that you're not responsible for what you do. A woman's sexual charm intoxicates you, and you are no longer responsible for whatever your impulse.
Which goes very much into, and we're not going to go into it too much, but Western women, when they come to Thailand, the actual laws of rape and sexual violence are conditioned by this assumption that women can put you into a state where you no longer have full control over yourself.
Right.
And the reason why I bring this up is that if you're trying to build Sine as a female fighter, but you want a kind of masculine Sine or charm, the reason why women have to castrate their sexuality is that their charm in the culture is seen like as dangerous, not part of the Kaimoi, like the powers of female allurement are perceived kind of almost in like a 1950s America kind of way.
Yeah, there is a strong currency for Thai women to be sexy and pretty. They use the loan word pretty, which is someone whose job it is to be pretty, like a spokesmodel or something like this. And they kind of use this as like a doll that you can put in different scenarios. So like Barbie is Barbie, and then you put her in a nurse uniform and she's a nurse kind of thing, is that there are Thai female fighters who are promoted as being sexy and beautiful, and their Muay Thai doesn't matter at all. It's like you put Barbie in a Muay Thai ring and you're like, now she's a Muay Thai fighter and she's promoted for her beauty.
There's not
the only
a
thing
lot
they talk
of
about.
these.
No, there's not. But,
but there it is
trying
something.
to use your sexuality within the context of Muay Thai, that's what you get. You don't get like and she's super hot. Like.
Yeah, although sometimes they try to sell that too. There have been Thai fighters that have been kind of Sutsoi Muay Thai.
Oh man, when you were.
Yeah, we don't want to go
Never
into
mind.
that. Yeah. Okay, so that was just a side note. I find this fascinating. Concepts of charm and magnetism in a culture, and even in Western culture, the antecedents of our concepts of charm and magnetism go back to beliefs in magic. And in Thailand, there still are magical beliefs. There's sakyant, there's beliefs that you can be enchanted and whatnot. Anyways, so back to this bringing of MMA into Lumpinee that Fairtex is announcing. I think their first fight is going to be in January.
No. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Sylvie's in her no yes mode.
It's always no first.
But it wasn't clear if MMA was going to be on that card. They're making this promotion. So this is in the forefront of this internationalization of Muay Thai that involves a kind of entertainment Muay Thai, distortion or reinvention of Muay Thai for popularity's sake. We talked about it, part of the like commercial gym culture in Phuket. This is part of this huge wave that's coming through. For me, for some reason, it crossed a line. And I'm not against MMA. I actually find you interviewed Itty in 2016, this kid who was like the son of the landlord
Thai,
or something,
yeah.
Thai, who was like way into MMA and was an proto MMA fighter back in 2016 in a totally undeveloped scene. I love the like burgeoning MMA Thai, young Thais being attracted to MMA instead of its opposite, traditional Muay Thai. But there was something about the inclusion of MMA into Lumpinee Stadium that crossed a line in my brain, which was not the same line or not the same thing as these inclusion of these low skill level 3-round fights that are currently happening in Lumpinee Stadium.
Do you know what it is, or it's like I don't know why that bothers me so much?
I do have ideas about it, that's why I want to talk about it really. There
Does
is
it have to do with Ajahn Surat?
maybe a little bit, but not entirely. As to someone taking a position that entertainment Muay Thai isn't even Muay Thai. Like, when you make it so Thai fighters cannot do what they do really well, which is fight backwards, counter fight, protect leads, like that's a big part of what the skill level of Muay Thai is. And you basically turn Muay Thai into a kind of clashy event that's readable by people who don't understand it, right? When I take that position, I get this feeling like people are like, oh, quit being so pretentious, so like traditionalist, purist, like whatever, these kind of like ideas about people who are protecting the shape of Muay Thai. So when entertainment-esque 3-round fights get into Lumpinee, women would not be in Lumpinee without this change.
Yeah, it's,
right?
like, it's just a package deal.
Package deal. When that is happening, I feel like it's harder to defend the idea that entertainment Muay Thai is not Muay Thai. It's like I have to do some work. I have to point some things out, the ways in which. When MMA is in Lumpinee Stadium, there's no theoretical position I have to take.
Is that because
it is not Muay Thai?
Is that because of MMA itself and its kind of like place in the world, or is that because the quality of MMA in Thailand, in Lumpinee, is going to be
No, that's
low?
a totally separate point. It's a separate sport. It's not the same sport in any way.
They had boxing at what, Rajadamnern before?
Yeah, and I actually, the history of boxing at Lumpinee is a very long history that was King supported, and actually the relationship between.
It was meant to bolster Muay Thai as well at the same time.
What do you mean?
The patronage of the king being interested in Western boxing was also building Muay Thai. Like, he wasn't like boxing instead of Muay Thai.
Yeah.
He was like boxing and Muay Thai.
Well,
Like
if you look at the actual history of the modernization of Muay Thai, Muay Thai modernized in 1920 to become more like boxing, and the original like King's patronage of the modernization of Muay Thai, the first permanent ring in Bangkok was a boxing and Muay Thai ring. Muay Thai and boxing have run in parallel from the 1920s, including the whole history of Lumpinee Stadium. Now there's no boxing there, but boxing was a brother to Muay Thai for decades, and I'm sorry to alarm anybody who thinks Ramon Decker taught boxing to Thailand. Right? People do believe this. He came and like comboed up all the Thais and beat everybody, and they all
would be so pissed off.
Yeah, no, didn't happen that way. But anyways, you make a good point. Muay Thai always has been a kind of mixed martial art. Even its grappling was probably influenced by judo in the early 1900s as judo became a internationalized, rationalized sport coming out of Japan. For sure. But this is the thing. Muay Thai is ailing. Like, let's say traditional Muay Thai is ailing. Khai Muay Muay Thai is ailing in Thailand. one of the stakes in the ground, which is what I'll call it the gold standard, which was literally the stamp of the king almost, of which kept Muay Thai fastened, was Lumpinee. I honestly didn't think it even deserved that place anymore once it moved. It had changed so much already, but there still was a stake in the ground. And so its ability to weather other sports and other formats and things because it's not strong now, that stake in the ground got pulled up. And for some reason, 3-round fights are, okay, I understand what you're doing. You're trying to make this friendly and a mixed promotion and whatever. When you bring MMA into the Lumpinee Stadium, and you're still calling it Lumpinee Stadium, it's like, it's too far. Then, what you also brought up, this is not going to be high-level MMA. Even one championship, for people who really love MMA, one championship, which is the alt UFC, isn't high-level MMA. Maybe Chartry will bring in with Fairtex their best MMA fight or something. But we're basically talking that if MMA is going to be regularly part of these promotions, we're talking low skill level. So not only are you bringing in the other art, the other sport, into an already ailing, once was the gold standard, but you're also bringing low-level examples of it. I'm assuming that Fairtex is just going to use it to promote their fighters.
Yeah. Well, part of the new Lumpinee is that it's becoming an event center rather than like
Exact concerts.
the mecca of Muay Thai.
Yeah, but I feel like, and I'm not even saying I'm against this happening. I'm not saying this should not happen. I'm not that kind of person. I'm like, in that this is happening, something has become unmoored, and we have no idea how far this is going to ripple out. This could have a huge counter reaction. It could be a positive in a way if, for instance, Thais see shitty MMA at Lumpinee and are like, what are you doing to our great arena? And there might be a whole counter move towards traditional Muay Thai elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like not
Rajadamnern.
or we were like, wow, wouldn't it be cool? All the fights, all the big promotions are doing fights in Buriram now. Wouldn't it be cool if Buriram became a kind of Isan locus for traditional ring fighting? And people were like, go ahead, go to Lumpinee if you want. I was watching the Go Sport promotion
Yesterday.
Yeah, are you checking your time with you?
It's 12 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead, baby.
Yeah, I'm watching. Yesterday, and not to be hard on it or anything, but I watched the Go Sport promotion, the new Lumpinee promotion, and then later in the night we watched Muay Hardcore. I have to say, even though the rule sets were not the same between the two, I felt like I was watching the same thing. Like, not super skill stuff, lots of emphasis. There was a vibration that moved between these two things.
Well, it makes sense that would be the case because what new Lumpinee is modeling itself after is the success of Channel 8.
Well, they're trying to like bridge between Channel 8 and traditional Muay Thai. They are putting on 5-round fights that are scored they're not yet using an entertainment Muay Thai scoring, as far as we understand, a scoring thing, but there is a vibration. It's with the lights and the emphasis on presentation. Like, I mean, there's a lot of sizzle and not a lot of steak. There's an analogy.
Yeah, we like to use music as an example, and we like to use rap as an example of like having flow and kind of actually saying something rather than just rhyming dog with dog kind of thing. But this idea that you can meld the 3-round fights that are popular right now with the traditional 5-round fights of traditional Muay Thai without gambling or whatever it is that they're trying to do, you cannot actually have a concert where you have like Run DMC and Kanye. Like they don't, it's not the same audience that would watch those two.
You probably could, but you shouldn't make a whole promotion out of it like a regular thing.
Okay, don't put Britney Spears and Led Zeppelin on the same.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. To me, the music industry is so chaotic and crazy.
I'm making a point about that. I'm making a point about how they're like basically trying to catch the wind of contemporary popularity, but staying a little bit with the old one. It's like these are not the same. Like we do not watch both because we love both. We watch hardcore because we love sousing.
Well, there's another thing here, which is the skill level on these shows is very low.
Yep.
Like it's probably actually below Channel 8 fights.
Oh, you're talking about Go Sport.
Yeah, the skill level is very low. If you want to kill all gambling in Muay Thai, it's very easy. Put on fights nobody cares to gamble on.
Yeah.
Like you keep there's a reason why the max fights were not gambling based, that this is not actually competitive gambling material, although Thais will gamble on anything, like they gamble on beetles.
Yeah.
So it's not incredibly the things, but if you don't have stories behind fighters and you watch them grow up in the stadiums and have regional alliances and things like that, there's nothing to gamble on of interest. There's no investment. And I feel like as Muay Thai is moving towards the like showroom mentality, which is meant for kind of wide-screen audiences and also touristic, bussing in people who don't even understand the sport, you're like, yes, you can take all gambling out, but then it's because people don't care. And I just feel like bringing in low or mid-level MMA skill into Lumpinee, I feel like Thais are going to look at it and be like,
Yeah, I don't know that Thais are actually fans of MMA. They love when Loma fights on UFC or Stamp fights on one of the other Fairtex male fighters. They enjoy that. But they enjoy it because it's Thais on an international stage.
Well, there'll be Thais there too.
Right, but they love it on the international stage. They're not like, I love MMA.
Oh, that's true. They do like it that it's international. But they'll put Stamp versus a Westerner or something in an MMA fight.
Yeah,
I just there's something about the line was crossed, and I understand everything is morphing. Lines are going to be crossed, but personally for me, I asked you the other day. I'm like, 2 years ago, if someone said women will be allowed to fight in Lumpinee, but the cost is MMA also is in Lumpinee, would you have accepted it? And this is women fighting in Lumpinee has been a huge dream of yours, not for you personally only, for the change of Muay Thai and integration of women. And I'm like, would you accept that bargain? And you were like, no. You still say no right now?
Yeah, you asked me like yesterday.
I don't know. You changed your mind?
I keep.
Well, why is that? Because 3-round fights yes.
Okay, I have a couple of things going on in my head right now. One is I'm remembering up in Chiang Mai when I went to fight at Le Crow and the MMA cage had been left up from the night before because they just didn't take it down.
Yeah.
And so I had to fight Muay Thai in an MMA cage simply because they couldn't take it off of the ring.
Yeah, can you imagine if that happens in Lumpinee?
Which I found very unpleasant in every sense. And this was 8 years ago or something. Like, small venue, not Lumpinee, like this like introduction of MMA to these spaces just felt like an encroaching kind of thing. So I think that I kind of have that association still. I felt that then, I feel that now kind of thing. With the 3-round fights, I don't like this format for myself. I don't love watching it. I definitely don't like fighting it. But I will say that last night when we were watching on Muay Hardcore, I was very surprised. I'm sorry I don't know her current fight name, but she was called Bukhao before. She fights out of Sutai. Incredibly experienced Thai fighter.
Female.
She fought a 3-round fight with an arc like a 5-round fight. She just managed to make it like a story arc in the way that she fought. It was awesome and exciting, and yes, we were excited because we were cheering for her. Like, I don't know if I had never seen this girl before, I would have cared that much, but I thought it was beautiful that she brought that element into a 3-round fight rather than bringing the 3-round fight bashing into a 5-round fight or something.
Yeah, but the only reason why she did that is because she's fought probably 200 5-round arc fights. She's has the skill that came from being a traditional Muay Thai fighter, and she actually fought a huge number of them against really big Western fighters because she was a Phuket fighter. But the thing is like now, if she was coming up, she would never have that skill.
No. There was a third part. Oh, when you asked me, you actually told me not to use this example before, so I don't know whether I can use it. But when you said, would I accept the monkey's claw of MMA comes with the possibility of female Muay Thai, like that's the package, do you accept that package? And I'm like, no. Is that so many things had to change. So many things had to change in order to get women into Lumpinee that what I was saying no to MMA for women to be there was Lumpinee being a completely different place than it is now.
Right.
So women getting in and all these other changes coming at the same time, it's like the importance of women in Lumpinee is still incredible, but it's not my dream. It's not the dream I had. And I use this example, and Kevin told me not to, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's like,
don't do it, baby.
It's like when you meet your favorite celebrity and they're like drunk and hit on you or something. You're like, that's not the experience I was hoping for. And it kind of just like dims whatever fantasy you had or whatever dream you had of they're an actor, a singer, or whatever the thing is. And you see this like stage performance, and then you meet them in person, and it's a disappointing reality.
And if things go the way that they seem to be going, and Go Sport gains traction and support, and Fairtex maybe brings Chartreuse 1 in, there will be women fighting in Lumpinee every single week, if not more frequently.
And one is much better at promoting women as a like, we value you, you're a star up like this. So MMA's experience with women being legitimate stars of the sport could influence female Muay Thai fighters.
This feels terrible.
It does, but it's a possibility.
No, I'm saying even if that's great, and they're like the greatest striker on the planet, that's how they do it. They bullshit. They turn their female hype machine on, and it's like this unbelievable, off the charts description of their female stars.
Yeah, UFC does that too.
Yeah, yes, but I'm like, we're living in crazy land. And I'm like, that's not what we need, but I guess we can't be choosy either. Yeah. Because history is rolling. I just think once the stake in the ground has been pulled, and obviously we didn't know how Lumpinee is going to unfold, and we still don't know. Like you were saying that Big Dang was like, we're gonna have once a month a big card. A big card has to be famous Thai fighters fighting in the Thai, under Thai rules. For a title or something. For a title, like Lumpinee title or whatever they're going to create. They're still going to try to create this mecca of Muay Thai.
I don't know what a big show is without gambling. Like, when you have a big show that's like Pet Yindi or Giat Pet or whatever, and they go to Buriram or they go to like down in the south and they bring in all their stars.
But the gambling's online.
It doesn't matter. The reason people are excited about it is to gamble. Do you remember when we drove up to Chiang Mai with Diesel Noi and Karahat, and there was a big Buriram fight happening, and they were just chittering the entire way up about Shadow, or like whether Sang Mani would win.
There's not going to be no gambling. There's just going to be the impression of no gambling in the stadium. All the online gambling is going to go be off the charts.
Yeah, but your huge big show in an empty stadium.
Yes.
What is that? I've fought in empty stadiums before because we've lived through a couple of coups here, but like, it's bizarre.
Yeah, well, also COVID, every fight is now against with no audience. It's not like a new thing. It's going to be in the context of all the COVID changes. There's another aspect. What time are we on, maybe?
Minute 25.
How can you see that?
It's shadowed.
Oh. Well, we'll start this over here real quick. All right. there's another aspect of MMA, which you mentioned, which is Arjan Surat. We were filming for the Muay Thai Library. Arjan Surat, who's the coach of the Thai national team, he's very like hard-nosed, Clint Eastwood, rugged persona, speaks his mind. This is at the end of the first session we've done with him. There's 2 in the Muay Thai Library, but he's talking about 3-round fights and how much he doesn't really like them at all.
They were kind of new in popularity at that time.
Yeah, they were starting to like
gain traction.
There was an actual struggle within the Thai government whether MMA would be legal. It was illegal because it was seen as a threat to the cultural heritage of Thailand, which it clearly is. Like it is a threat.
You were correct.
Yeah, but they had made it illegal, and then I remember Chartri and one somehow flexed muscle in the Thai government and got permission to put on a rock concert / MMA promotion in Bangkok.
It was like a concert that had MMA.
Yeah, and they might even be thinking about doing this again. But there was a struggle in Thailand, and Arjan Surat, we were talking to him, and he was like, the 3-hour fights are so bad because there's no timing. He's like, no timing. Everything is just smash, smash, smash. And there's no timing because you are not allowed to retreat. You cannot counterfight. It's not permitted. So, and then he was talking about how this is in violation of the spirit. Oh, look at this beautiful
Spiderweb. Yeah, I've been gawking at that.
Wow. He was like, this is against the spirit of Muay Thai, and he says that Muay Thai is a gentleman's sport. One of the most interesting things about Muay Thai is its reputation for brutality and bloodiness, but also self-control. That the fighters are celebrated by this line they walk between violence and repose.
Yeah, and there's like a dignity and self-control, and if you look at like the masculinity that rides between being a monk and being a Muay Thai fighter, it's the self-control.
Monk
it's like
and
learning to understand and control
yourself,
your situation. Yeah.
And that's one reason why pure aggression is not celebrated in Muay Thai. It's seen as being out of control. These things go deep into the very culture, the Buddhistic culture of Thailand, and have given Muay Thai its character and its value within the culture, its Thai-ness. Now, I understand that youth of today probably is rebelling against the traditional values of Thai culture, but as these sports start to present themselves as aggression sports, and so I remember in that conversation, I actually went back and looked at it to see what he had to say. He was like a gentleman's sport, and then he mimed standing over someone and punching them while they're on the ground.
Well, that's MMA, not 3-round fights, right?
To him, there was the same thing. He was actually talking about how the Thai government was shutting down Takun's MX Muay Thai, which was
Muay Thai in MMA gloves.
Yeah. And I think it was 3-round fights.
For sure.
Yeah. So he was like, they're closing this down, and he was linking that to the reason is this is linked to MMA, which is not gentlemanly. And he was like, to him, it was like, if someone's on the ground and you're just punching their face, this is in complete violation of what Muay Thai is.
Yeah, it was not that long ago that America, in many states, MMA was illegal. It was seen as too bloody, it was too brutal, whatever the thing is. So this is not like a completely foreign concept to Western culture either. It's just we've been steeped in it for more years that now people are like, oh, it's totally a
Yeah,
legitimate
but
sport.
what is new is that there's no cultural heritage that's being protected by making MMA illegal in America. That Thailand's Muay Thai is a cultural heritage, is a sport of the country that expresses the traditional values of the country. And so I'm not against MMA at all. I mean, if it's high level and I understand the fighters and everything, to me it's an interesting fighting sport to watch. But what you are bringing in is the embodiment of certain principles from which entertainment Muay Thai is borrowed, like the clashy kind of stylistics that can be viewed by people who don't even understand the sport. Two people standing far away and smashing. You don't have to really understand very much. You can feel the violence. That, by bringing that to Lumpinee Stadium, you've basically said all bets are off.
Yeah.
Like, we're no longer in the land of Muay Thai anymore. And they've said they want to have martial arts of all kinds. When they say martial arts of all kinds, they probably just mean MMA, right? And so there's this kind of like, I don't know, it's like we've crossed a line from which there may not be any retreat. And I don't want to be down on MMA in a way, like, it's just that it was Lumpinee Stadium feels very like a degree of difference than all the other changes.
I hear your frustration, and because I'm a woman and I've lived through the time when me even mentioning women going under the bottom rope or not being able to touch the Lumpinee ring, and these like Western white cultural saviors talking about how I'm so awful to even question that, like, you just have to wait for Thai culture to change and that this is a sacred spot and women don't belong in it and all this stuff. I see how I am projecting that to the next thing, that I'm like, MMA does not belong in Lumpinee, but Lumpinee is no longer Lumpinee.
Well,
already.
That's the point, is it's no longer Lumpinee, and in a way, Muay Thai lost its gold standard. So I'm not actually worried about Lumpinee itself.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the Muay Thai, Muay Thai of Thailand. Where is its gold standard coming from? Because that stake has been pulled out of the ground. It was already probably out, but this is kind of like definitionally out. It is no longer stabilizing the imprint of what authentic Muay Thai currency is.
Yeah.
Its name now is in line with a different currency.
Yeah.
And if MMA might not even be the limit of that. Maybe it's 2 men versus 1 man fights. Do you know what I mean? Or 2 women versus 1 man, or 3 midgets. At what point are we just like completely off the map?
This is the thing, is that this was not that long ago. This was probably not even 5 years ago. Some promoter at Lumpinee, this was at the same time that Nong Rose was being promoted at Rajadamnern, with some pretty bizarre fights. She fought Hippie's brother, who's a Golden Age fighter, long retired, in his 50s. And they put him against Nong Rose as like a show fight. So that's bizarre in and of itself. But because of her popularity, Angie also had the ability to fight at Lumpinee. So like there were some strange...
You're losing me on this bit.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
This was not that long ago where like some kind of spur of the moment themes were happening in these like protected stadia. And around that same time, there was a promoter who put on a fight between 2, in Thai they're called Nak Lang. They're basically like gangster, mobster type guys. But these 2 are just rich kids full of tattoos who like just are online, and they have beef with each other online. They're basically like online celebrities. And a promoter put on a fight between the 2 of them in MMA gloves. It was only 1 round, and it was for charity.
Right.
But the stir around real Kai Muay, real fighters, real gyms that were like, I can't believe you're putting this on at Lumpinee. Like, have a show fight, whatever you want, but not at Lumpinee. Like, put it at some fucking other stadium.
I kind of don't mind one fight, like odd fight or odd thing.
I'm saying that's become the norm now.
That's the thing is now it's like this is now the path of the name in a weird way. I joked about it, or half joked about it, that there was a time, it kind of got out about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, that Westerners could come and fight at Lumpinee Stadium, even their first or second or third fight ever, because there was this kind of adventure tourism fight card that would happen before the first fight card in the day, and they would basically bring in Westerners to fight Thais, and they would have a Lumpinee fight. And it was a point of great pride for these people to fight in the hallowed stadium. But these are not skilled fighters, and there were no Thais watching. There were no gambling, because these are not. This is a matinee kind of thing, and it was. And before this came out, fighting in Lumpinee was like the great hollowed thing, right? then this came out that actually people, I think it was Muay Thai Scholar he was like, people just asked me if I wanted to fight in Lumpinee. They didn't even know if I could fight. They just asked me if I wanted to.
Saw him at the gym.
And he wrote like an article about this. It was actually kind of groundbreaking. So that came out. But what was really weird is that undercard experience has now become the foundation, kind of Lumpinee itself.
Yeah. I will say this, that the steadfast, if there's one thing that Lumpinee is like for sure about, there are a lot of things changing right now. Things are changing like every 5 days, different announcements, we're gonna add this, whatever. The one thing that's like for sure you can set your clock to is that they're not allowing gambling. There was something suggested a couple of months ago, which was that all the fights were going to be day before weigh-in, which in Thailand is not a thing unless it's one of these entertainment 3-round
It's not.
fights.
It's the sign of it not being a real fight.
Right. So they were like, we're going to do day before weigh-ins, and there was a huge outcry where people were like, you cannot do day before weigh-ins because it basically just lets bigger people take advantage of smaller people wholesale. And they backed down. Big Dang backed down. He said, if it's a 5-round fight, it has to be day of. If it's an entertainment 3-round fight, you can do day before. That is a perfect example of gambling protecting Muay Thai as it is.
That's very interesting.
If you get rid of gambling, who the fuck knows where Muay Thai will go?
That's kind of true.
But because you will not bet on a fight that like they weighed in the day before, who knows how big the bigger one is when he's full, whatever. They're like, I can't bet on this.
So crazy. I mean, we're not denying that gambling has serious problems and that you cannot put the integrity of wins and losses in the hands of people who are not in the stadium. Like, people basically can call in wins and losses. But gambling also is inherent in the interest and glue that holds together competitive fighting, all the way down to the villages. And so there's a fabric of gambling that's different than the giant mega gambler whale investors that can throw their weight around. They're two separate worlds. And if you just treat the whole thing as a terrible thing, you're going to basically unmoor competitiveness itself.
Yeah.
It then just becomes who can make a more eyeball show. Like, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, maybe the Rotdang versus Demetrius Johnson fight is going to be in Lumpinee. Like, baby.
This is how our actual conversations go all the time.
Yeah, I just, I mean, I'm also I'm not just a backward-looking person. I want Lumpinee to reach for standards and practices that can rescue the heritage of Muay Thai also. I just see forces at work that are going to put Muay Thai under great transformation. And with that transformation will be the loss of all kinds of things that we value and cherish. Like, even the ability to understand how to fight at a very high level will be lost. And we document this in the Muay Thai Library of all these legends. We've made paying attention to these older men much more relevant. When we started doing this, people were like, who? What? Who cares? Old men. These are just old men. These are fucking like brilliant.
Yeah, now people, when they
fighters.
come to Thailand, they're like, how do I get a private with this legend? Like, how do I train with this legend and learn from them and all this stuff? Like, nobody was doing that before.
No, and now it's become a destination. So there is the possibility of rescuing the past of Muay Thai, but I just feel like the winds of change are blowing so hardcore right now.
Yeah.
And the commercial interests
Well,
are
and
invested so heavily.
People who set their sails to catch that wind are benefiting.
Yeah.
People who are like, I don't want to go in that direction are like at odds with that headwind.
What people are you talking about? You're talking about fighters?
No, like promotions that are like, I do not want a no gambling promotion. Like, they're not interested in going into the Lumpinee no gambling situation, or they don't like the 3-round fights or whatever the thing is. They're like pushing against these changes. Some of them are big enough that they can do it, but some of them aren't.
Yeah, I feel like there's a schism in Muay Thai right now. And before Max Muay Thai was this like unusual promotion that was getting lots of views, and it was like an oddity, and Thais would just laugh like this isn't real fighting, but it's kind of like circus fighting, and it wasn't taken seriously, but it actually has proliferated and copied itself in so many versions, and Muay Thai gyms have now adopted the strategies, the values of this promotional matrix, that it actually now has invaded Lumpinee, its stadium itself. There's some pretty hardcore lines being drawn that I feel like we won't even know what Muay Thai is 10 years from now. Like we're living through a time of great change. I'm very like,
It's also very hard because when you come and it's new and you're starting to see things, you just assume that's the way it's always been. Like,
that's true too.
There are people who come to these not Kai Muay but gyms, and they're like integrated and they're eating with the fighters and doing this whole thing, and they think that's the same experience John Wayne Parr had, and John Wayne Parr's experience doesn't exist anymore. Like what he experienced does not exist, and people who are doing it now are like, yeah, it's the same. It's like not the same. It's not even possible to be the same anymore. He's from a completely different time.
Yeah, and it's not all bad change. I guess my point is, it's okay if we bring change, and there is change. Let's just mark what's changing. Let's just not let things change willy-nilly without us even paying attention to the costs. We can take change. Every sport evolves. Muay Thai evolved over 100 years in its interactions with other sports.
Oh, totally. Like Silver Age fighters talking about Golden Age fighters, so like it's not even the same thing.
Totally. And so I don't mind the change. I'm just like, let's mark what's altering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meh.
Is that good?
Meh.
Meh? What's that sound?
It's not meh. It's eh.
Okay, we're ending on a positive note.
It's positive.
Okay, so what about that?
What's our positive note?
Positive note, we got another Muay Thai Bones out quickly.
We went through rain.
We went through rain.
And now there's sunshine.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you can become a supporter of the podcast and get it as an audio if you're a patron, and get access to our enormous Muay Thai library, which we're adding to every month.
It is the most extensive online content of
It will
Muay
change
Thai
history.
anywhere.
It will change history, and it will change you as a fighter. So thank you everybody for supporting, and cue music.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun-dun-dun.
There's a storm coming.
That's actually very timely.